Everything that we do here is to make more money. If you charge low prices, your product will be perceived as low value. Increase your prices, and you will not only make more money, but people will actually use your product and value it more. This is pricing psychology that few understand. Here's how Steve Jobs thought about it.
Our goal is to make the best personal computers in the world and to make products we are proud to sell.
What we don't realize mostly is that pricing is the ultimate growth lever. Yet most small businesses fail to pay attention to it, and if they do, they tend to underprice out of fear. The reality, get it wrong, you'll hate your customers. Get it right, and you can help yourself build a profitable, resilient business that customers respect and pay for. So today, I'm gonna go through how do you price your business better. Your action steps are going to be these. Hello and welcome to the Big Deal podcast. I'm Codie Sanchez, and this week we're doing something a little different. If you've ever asked, why do you make these videos? Well, I own a portfolio of businesses, and we invest in small businesses across the country, and we invest in the infrastructure and technology of the companies that build our small businesses. So part of the reason why I am doing these episodes now on Build is so that you may one day partner with us. Maybe you let us invest in your company. Maybe we grow alongside you. Maybe you even sell your company to us. So I hope you make more money. I hope you build it in your community. And also, I hope that you build a small business so I don't have to go to any more chains. Without further ado, let's get into it. If you want to make more money, the easiest thing to do is actually sell things for more money. If you charge low prices, your product will be perceived as low value. Increase your prices, and you will not only make more money, but people will actually use your product and value it more. This is pricing psychology that few understand. What we don't realize mostly is that pricing is the ultimate growth lever. Yet most small businesses fail to pay attention to it, and if they do, they tend to underprice out of fear. The reality, your pricing dictates your profits, customer quality, and brand perception. Get it wrong, you'll hate your customers. Get it right, and you can help yourself build a profitable, resilient business that customers respect and pay for. I wish more people paid attention to the powerful levers in a business that pricing is. Set it wrong, you struggle with thin margins, weak growth, and constant pressure to sell even more just to break even. So today, I'm going to go through how do you price your business better. Your action steps are going to be these. 1, raise your prices. If it's been over a year, you're behind. 2, compare against competitors. If you're the cheapest, you're likely undervaluing yourself. Also remember guys, you can only price yourself the absolute cheapest to the bottom. There is no value in being the second most cheap. So why play that game anyway? 3, you're going to test and track, increase prices incrementally, and measure customer response. 4, I want you to offer tiers. This is how you capture different customers with different pricing levels. Most people charge one price, you're going to expand at least 3. 5, this is how you communicate value. You frame price changes around quality, not just cost. And then 6, monitor and adjust. You don't set it and forget it. So here's my guide on how to raise prices so that your customers thank you for it. I built something for you builders. If you are building a business right now, I think this is the playbook for scaling businesses. We call it our contrarian operating system. It's how I manage all of our businesses to both grow really simply, but consistently. And it's free for you. If you want it, just click the link in the show description and try out the operating system. I really think you guys, if you want to have a business, not a job, you have to have a system and a process and not a hope and a prayer. If this is useful for you all as well, you can talk to my team. We have tons of resources for builders. I am here to make sure you succeed. In our portfolio, we've realized if you don't understand pricing, your business will be held back from ever hitting its potential. It is oddly overlooked. So let's jump into some examples. I think the best way to learn is by modeling. Let's look at YouTube. YouTube TV has raised its prices by 137%. 2017, they launched, it was $34.99. And by January 2025, it was $82.99. Remember when YouTube TV was the cheap alternative to cable? I mean, I remember this. 5 years after launch, the price doubled. Fast forward to the hike in January, and we're starting to wonder if it's a ripoff. Think YouTube ever felt anger at increasing their bottom line? Nope, not really. While prices are rising steadily, so are paying customers. They're estimated to surpass every other ad live TV platform by 2026. 8 million paying subscribers at the end of 2024, so like 600 million in revenue. But they're not the only massive companies to successfully raise prices. We've got Netflix. Netflix raised their prices from $8 a month in 2007 to $23 a month today. And then they lost a few customers So they lost some in the beginning. They lost 1 million customers when they increased their prices the first time, but today they have 300 million paid subs. You know what's wild? Over the last 2 weeks, you are the only reason this podcast has grown. I don't know if you're new here or you've been here for a while and y'all just started sharing more, but you were the only reason that we continue to climb the charts and hopefully provide more and more value for you. We just moved up from top 100 to top 50 in biz on Spotify, which is cool. So thank you for sharing with your friends, and thank you for sharing with your employees, and thank you for sharing in your Slack groups and social media and everywhere else. And if you like this podcast, please do send it to another human that you care about, because you are a big deal to me, and I know they are a big deal to you too. So that's a beautiful thing to do. Thank you for sharing the pod. What's wild is they're obviously more profitable. I mean, if you look at this, you can basically see that we have increased margins and users at Netflix. What I thought was interesting, and here's where we're going to steal their homework, is they do it by offering multiple tiers. So if you want to stay at the lower tier, you can. Your wallet doesn't get hit. They use an ungrandfathering strategy, so you don't get to stay in your price point forever. At some point, you just got to keep moving up. And they realize that if they have the best content in the world, people will continue to pay. Now, another one, Starbucks. They had to raise prices due to inflation supposedly in 2023, and they got killed. They got murdered for it on TV. Everybody said it was terrible. But then what happened? Well, they actually increased their revenue that year. So they were estimated to do like $9.28 billion. Their actuals in 2023 were $9.37 billion, and they made more money. Instead of having negative traffic to stores, they were positive. They increased their average order value. And the same thing happened for Amazon Prime. You know, they basically went and tripled their price since they first started in 2025. Now, I think the moral of the story here is if big companies are doing it, it doesn't always mean that your little company can do it, but how can you steal their homework? So how do you raise prices and have customers thank you? First, we're going to go with value bundling. So YouTube is streaming the Super Bowl. Amazon just added new Prime benefits. Starbucks just launched a new favor. How could you quit now when they have something that you want? In our business, that may be something like, let's say, that you run a small window cleaning company like we do, Pinks. Well, in our window cleaning company, if you want to have the new power washing service added one time a year, you need to be on a recurring payment plan. So we bundle it. That keeps you in a position. At Contrarian Thinking, if you want to come to all of our community events, well, that is only a possibility if you stay with us in one program. So we're going to bundle. Second, market position assessment. This basically is a study where you need to look at your customers and see how indispensable you are to them. Netflix, well, the friction of changing habits outweighs the friction of paying $2 more a month. That's the same with me for my gym. I kind of don't want to go to anyone. The gym's located close to my house. If they raised my price $5 to $10 a month, I probably wouldn't care. This is also why you want to sell more things to rich people, because they actually much more value convenience and continuance as opposed to price and discounts. So you want to ask yourself, for my user base, how much do they absolutely need me? How much do they also not notice what's happening? Landscaping, let's say. If you have to go out and you find a new landscaper, they can't come, you have to schedule somebody, you might actually have more price defensibility than you think. 3, tiered implementation of pricing. So what does this mean? It means that you look at your customer segment, and over the course of the next 3 months or 12 months, I want you to do one thing. Okay, my highest value customers, I'm going to add some value to the offer that I have for them, and then I'm going to increase their prices. Then I'm going to go to my mid-tier. I'm going to do the same thing. Then I'm going to go to my lower tier. I'm going to do the same thing. So every single segment gets increased in price, step 1. Step 2 is going to be the low segment gets an offer to go to your mid segment. Well, you know, you have our basic car wash. The basic car wash doesn't include cleaning up the wheels and spraying the interior. Would you like to upgrade to the premium car wash? Okay, cool. Upgrade to that. So now we've not only increased the price of the low, the mid, and the high, but we're moving customers from low to mid to high. They have a choice in both, and they get value in both. Lastly, we do the math. Everything that we do here is to make more money. So there are really 3 ways to make more money in your business, right? You can do acquisition, you can get new customers, you can do retention, you can keep those same customers, or you can charge more to your current customers. Any of those three gives you more money. Well, what's interesting is Y Combinator did a study, and they said for every 1% increase in each one of these, acquisition, retention, and monetization, what amount of growth do we get from it? Well, it turns out if you get 1% increase in new clients, you get about 3.5% growth. If you get 1% increase in retention, keeping your clients, you get about 6.6% growth. And if you get 1% increase in the monetization, or how much you charge to your clients, you get about 12% growth. So basically 12x. By the way, if you're building a business right now and you're stuck or you want to break out to the next level, maybe you're not where you want to be today. Believe me, I've been there many, many times. I want you to know I got you. We help thousands of business owners a year figure out how to scale to the next level. One of my favorite mentors said, every level you have, there's just a higher level and a higher devil. And so if you've been in business for a while and you're doing 6, 7, or 8 figures, there's probably one thing standing in the way of your next level. That's why we host growth and scale workshops 4 times a year throughout the year in Austin, in Miami, in San Diego, and you may be a fit to come to one of them. If it sounds interesting to you to get help on how to scale your business to the next level, you can reach out to my team at the link in the show notes. We believe in you builders, but we also believe that it's a lonely road and you can't do it by yourself. What I like about this is this tells me that actually raising your prices not only is one of the easier things to do, but gives you the highest return on your money or growth. So we should really obsess on it. So if we know it's going to make us more money, the question is, won't I lose customers if I raise prices? And here's the truth. Price-sensitive customers are often less loyal anyway. They'll jump ship the second a cheaper option comes along. By raising prices, you filter out basically bargain hunters and find your true fans, or what we call your right fit customers. Now, I love this line that Peter Thiel talks about.
The extreme binary view of the world I always articulate is that there are exactly 2 kinds of businesses in this world. There are businesses that are perfectly competitive, and there are businesses that are monopolies.
What if my competitors undercut me? Well, let me say this. Your prices probably shouldn't be your selling point. Instead, you got to focus on differentiating through your value and quality. When you're the best at what you do, price becomes a triviality. Also, your aim in business is to achieve some semblance of control. So the ability to control is to set prices. This happens when you've created unique value. And I know monopoly sounds like a bad word, and it often is kind of. But Peter explains why it's not what you think. What if I can't raise my prices? You can. So how can you tell if you should raise your prices? You may just be too scared to raise your prices. And so these are the telltale signs your business is ready to raise. Number 1, you're selling out or can't keep up with demand. When you're drowning in orders, it's a clear signal the market is willing to pay you more for what you offer. Raise prices to align supply and demand and keep some sanity. Number 2, if you haven't raised your prices in over a year, then you need to. Inflation alone justifies a 2 to 5% annual bump, and your costs have definitely increased. So if you keep prices stagnant, that means you actually lose money. Inflation is the benchmark, but most of my portfolio companies are on a 3-month rotation. So every single 3 months, we look at the right pricing. Number 3, if your competitors charge more than you, have you done an evaluation of your competitor pricing? If you're pricing significantly less than them, it's a negative signal against you, actually. Because remember, price is an indicator of value. So if you let low prices paint the wrong picture, you might be making less money and losing sales. So that's why we get to number 4, which is preserving a premium image. Would you think highly of a Louis Vuitton bag if it cost $30? High-end brands aren't bashful about their prices. They filter out penny pinchers and they actually signal value. Here's how Steve Jobs thought about it, and I think it's pretty perfect.
I can tell you what our goal is. Our goal is to make the best personal computers in the world and to make products we are proud to sell. We just can't ship junk. There are thresholds that we can't cross because of who we are. We want to make the best personal computers in the industry.
Number 5, if you don't have multiple price tiers, you need to. Different customers have different needs and budgets. So basic, pro, premium, this is how you capture a wider range of the market. I like to start with 3. You can always add more. I have not met a business yet that does not need multiple price tiers. Every single business does. In fact, we had one business where it was a landscaping business, and they basically offered an RFP, a custom quote for every single user. And they thought that sounded good because they were really scared about messing up price amounts. But instead, what do? They gave 3 options. Here's the basic, here's the pro, here's the premium, and they made sure that they had enough wiggle room in there that those prices covered just about anything. Number 6, your commercial and retail rates are the same. So B2B clients have deeper pockets than consumers. Don't be afraid to charge them accordingly. Usually there's the rule of 20 to 100. So a 20 to 100% premium for commercial work is standard practice. If I charge a retail customer me $20, I can usually offer that price somewhere from 40 to 120 for a commercial work. 7, if you don't offer subscription options, this is like the holy grail of pricing. Predictable recurring revenue makes you less reliant on one-off sales. I like how YC partner Aaron Epstein explains how SaaS businesses make a killing here and why most other businesses fail. Let's watch part of this really quickly.
We also see that SaaS businesses are most likely to make the top 100 list. This means that customers keep paying them every single month or every single year until the customer explicitly says to stop.
Number 8, you don't incentivize longer commitments. If right now you don't incentivize longer commitments, you should. The longer a client commits, the more valuable they are. So offer discounts for clients who sign 6 to 12 month contracts up front. It's a win-win. They save money, you get guaranteed cash flow. So what I would say is on this one in particular, at all of our scaling workshops, we look at everybody's prices and we make sure that we also try to accelerate cash forward. So price changes don't always have to mean you charge more. It might mean you charge less, but they have to pay more upfront. So we need to get really creative with this. One final note, it is actually very possible to shoot yourself in the foot with raising prices. And here's the wrong way to do it as shown by Netflix. So Netflix absolutely killed their price range recently. The most recent Netflix price range was all over the internet and people hated them, and maybe rightly so. Here's what they did. They had an update that said this. You can see it right here. Hey, Joe, thank you for being a valued member since 2019. We hope you're enjoying everything Netflix has to offer. We're updating your monthly price to $17.99 pre-tax on March 21st, 2025. So instead of doing a magic moment, they said, you've been a valued customer for years. For no reason whatsoever, we're going to materially increase your price. It went from being $7.99 to almost $28.28 after taxes. And you can see the internet was like, rah, losing it. What could they have done instead? Let's rewrite their hook. Joe, you enjoyed 57 hours of Netflix last month. That's about 12 cents per hour last year. We hope you continue to enjoy Netflix. We have had a slight increase in price that will only increase your price to about 18 cents an hour, 20 cents an hour, whatever the math is. You guys can help me out. Also, they added 0 ounce of personalization. It falls flat. Remind your customer how they trusted you instead of reminding them how long they've been with you and how you don't care. The other thing that they didn't do is this email that we see here, I'm pulling it up on screen, it basically says, what's coming to Netflix in March of 2025? It feels like they're paying 20% more for a service that makes their life worse anyway. This email should have made them feel like they were personally funding more amazing shows, adding value to the subscription, not taking it away. What they do here is they put a bunch of shows on there that people don't seem to be excited about, that don't have big names and big headlines on it. They don't say what's coming. It kind of just seems like they're signaling. Also, it was too short. If it was me, you want to add some personality to it. I know they want to be short and sweet, but it just came off as curt. They don't provide any context, so customers provided their own like this. A company worth $416 billion that added 41 million new customers in the past year wants more of my hard-earned money. Terribly communicated. And for that reason, they took a big stock price hit, at least for a period of time. So if you're a small business and you don't have too much weight to throw around and you can't just not care like Netflix does, my friend Patrick Campbell has a great thought on this. 1, we take the 8 reasons why to raise your company that we've already talked about. 2, we think about how to show that you care. Hey, we know that tariffs are happening across the country right now. Instead of raising prices to perfectly match that, we only raised it to cover our costs to make sure that we can still keep the lights on. Thank you so much for being with us. We will continue to do everything possible to make this service at a reasonable cost for you. Just tell them the truth out loud instead of saying we want to do it no matter what. Moral of the story, guys, if you don't raise your prices, you won't have any margin. If you don't have any margin, you won't be able to beat your competitors. And the number one rule of business is whoever makes the most money wins, because they can just pay more for your customers. And eventually, because you were being nice, you will be out of business. If you guys liked this episode and you want to hear more, please tell me. The only way this podcast grows is when you guys share. So thank you so much for sharing the Big Deal podcast. You guys are the ones that help this grow. Let us know how you felt about this build episode. And if you tell me in the comments what you want to say to raise your prices, I'll respond back and tell you if that is a terrible idea or not. When men win the lottery, nothing really changes. When women win the lottery, the only really big change in their behavior is divorce.
The 10 richest men also have 13 divorces between them.
Holy shit.
My divorce was like the biggest failure of my life.
You just pick your human that you think is the best person for you, and then you work at it.
You can do something good alone.
Yeah.
Great? No.
Men usually come to therapy to try to stay, and women come to therapy to try to leave.
I'm just not a good human to be a partner to.
If you assume that your relationship is passively stable, you'll wake up one day to divorce papers. Having another human to stand beside and knowing that you choose one other person to go through time with is a fucking superpower. Welcome back. It's Codie Sanchez, and this is the Big Deal podcast. For those who don't just want to get rich, but want to be free and actually do what it takes to get there. All right, this week, we are talking about something that really nobody talks about, which is the D word, divorce. How does it happen to how many people? How much does it cost? Maybe a few ideas on how to avoid it. And I've been through this before. I was married previously, remarried, and have been through a divorce. It is not something I wish on anyone. And the second that I meet somebody going through divorce, I usually say something like, I'm so sorry, and also congratulations, because there's a conflicting set of emotions that happens when these things go down. And because nobody ever talks about it, I figured, let's ask some of my successful friends what it was like when they went through it. What did they learn? What would they do differently? And then let's go to the numbers and research and see what's actually going on in this world of divorce, which seems like it's increasingly more and more common. I don't know. So I think today we're going to get kind of controversial, right? Rachel, where do you want to start? What's our contrarian idea for the day?
So I think this is going to be a really interesting topic for me and other people listening who don't have divorced parents, who I've never been married, I've never been engaged, I've never had a divorce. But I'm really interested to know how much it actually costs to get divorced and what is that aftermath, especially in the business world. And Sam Parr had a really funny tweet. Actually, it's not funny, but it's really interesting, I guess, to catch my words there. The 10 richest men also have 13 divorces between them.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Wild.
That's a lot, right?
That's a lot. I also like Sahil Bloom's comment afterwards, though. So divorce makes you rich.
Yeah, there it is. There it is. That's the funny part.
And this is the chart of actually the 10 richest gents and whether they got divorced or not, or how many divorces they have. I thought there were a couple interesting things on here. One is like Larry Ellison figured out how to get divorced and he likes it 4 times. That's tough. Obviously, we know Elon Musk's 3. What else did you think was interesting here?
I thought it was interesting that obviously I feel like Mark Zuckerberg's wife has always been in the picture. And so I knew he wasn't divorced, but seeing that he was up here on the chart, I think he's number 5. Seeing that he's had 0 divorces amongst all these peers were really interesting to me.
Yeah. So it looks like Zuckerberg and Larry Page, only 2 of the, top, let's say 11 richest dudes who are not divorced, which is pretty wild. Which then makes me think, okay, so that means the divorce rate is accelerating. This is normal. We've all heard the percentage that 50% of marriages end in divorces. I just took that as sort of rote, and then we looked into it a little more. And what we actually found is that it's more like 70% of marriages in the 1990s actually made it to their 15th anniversary, and that this number is increasing from 65% for the 70s and 80s. So maybe the 50% number isn't right, first of all. But it does appear that a few things really drive divorce more increasingly. One being money, apparently. Uber wealth leads to optionality, which apparently leads to increasingly more people getting divorced. And the second thing I thought was interesting was this tweet from Chris Williamson, which was basically like, when men win the lottery, it's kind of nothing really changes. They get married at the same rate, they have kids at the same rate. When women win the lottery, the divorce rates double. The only really big change in their behavior is divorce, which I thought was really, really interesting. And then I think he had another one that surprised me also. Do you want to read what the second tweet is?
So this is from Chris Williamson, and he said, people with 9 or more premarital partners are 151% more likely to dissolve their marriages compared to people who tie the knot as virgins. In other words, the level of premarital sex increases the chance of divorce between twofold and threefold.
It's fucking wild. Which basically means, we were talking about it, like nobody ever wants to talk about body count, right? That's a weird thing to ask somebody. But now, apparently, if you've had 9 or more premarital partners on either side, this isn't like, what the Andrew Taters say, which is like, women should be virgins, we should off. Apparently, on either side, dudes and chicks, they both are 151% more likely to get divorced if they've had 9 or more premarital partners. And again, I don't think this says anything between your life choices, but I think knowing the numbers and not just assuming the narrative is right is like super important. And so when I look at this, I think, okay, well, I know already the odds are stacked in some ways. If you're really successful monetarily, looks like you have a higher divorce likelihood. If you've had sex with more partners or your significant other has, you might be more likely to get divorced. And also, it looks like if you come into a big chunk of money, you might be more likely to get divorced. But having been through divorce myself, I know nobody actually wants that. Like everybody talks about it like all of a sudden, if this happens, then divorce will be rampant. Like nobody wants to get divorced. It's an awful thing. You obviously want to make the right choice. You would never go through a wedding and all of the things and promises to a human if you thought you were going to get divorced eventually. And so I started digging into the numbers a little bit about how much divorce costs, and it's not cheap. So for the average person, the average wedding in the US is $30K, which is wild. The average cost of a divorce is like $12,000 to $100,000, obviously varying on total costs. And it takes, even without children, about 10 months, so almost a year on average. You can imagine the opportunity cost, how much time, attention, energy it takes away from anything else you do. You probably earn a lot less during that period too, because you're focused on something else. So I don't think divorce should be something we strive for in any way, shape, or form. It's awful. But then the question becomes sort of like, what do you do to not have divorce happen? And I don't profess to be some sort of expert on it, but I did think that this from Bill Perkins was really interesting on his thoughts on divorce, marriage, and staying in it.
Bring the band in. Let's go.
We're doing a series sort of on dating, relationship, divorce in general. And with the full spectrum of, I don't fucking know.
I have experience. Yes.
Exactly. Like I've been through it. I'm not an expert, not clinically trained. But one of the things that we realize is like people don't talk that much about divorce and what they would have done differently when they're successful.
Right.
And so I don't know if you have generalized thoughts on, you've been through divorce, you're now happily remarried, you have a great family and kids, but what did you learn?
Oh, I learned how I fuck things up. To me, my divorce was like the biggest failure of my life. It took a lot of unpacking to figure out, well, how did I screw this up? How did I go from happy pictures and a wedding and well wishes or whatever to, you know what I mean? Like, I can't do life with you, right? And so, was it a mistake in the beginning? Did I do this? What could I have done better? How could I have upheld these promises, right? And, and I say, well, at least I kept one promise. I will love you forever. Right? So that was part of it. So there was a lot of blame. It's so uncomfortable and so painful. You want to discharge that discomfort. And the clinical definition of blame is discharging that discomfort. So I had a lot of blame. Blame of other people, my ex-wife, you know what I mean? The situation, myself at times or whatever. And it's like, okay, where did I not do my best? And why didn't I do my best? And what limiting beliefs led me to this failure? So that was a lot of, this could be a whole episode in itself, right? Getting there. And then, what did I learn? Am I ever going to learn? Am I ever capable? I came out of that like, I'm just not a good human person to be a partner to. Like, I don't have it. Like, there's these things, right? Like, I was so down on myself and I was so lost because so much of my identity was tied up to, I'm married. I have this person and they're there. And then when I was gone, it's like, holy, I'm in single dad line. I don't even know how to interact with my kids without the other person around, right? Like, there was this whole balance that was there that I wasn't really consciously aware of. I knew it was there, like, superficially, but like, I didn't viscerally feel it. And when it was gone, I viscerally felt it. And there were so many ties that bound us that when they broke, I was like, oh, just that human being in the room was important to me. And so going through that, rediscovering myself, rediscovering what I didn't even know what I liked and disliked. You know what I mean? Like, like I said before, I was told to go on a lot of dates, not to go get laid and not to go whatever, but just to discover what you like in people, and I think that was great advice.
Now, you must like being married, though, because you chose to go round 2. And the first round is painful. I remember going through divorce and thinking, maybe it's Cabana Boys for life for me from here.
Cabana Boys sounds great when you're a woman. You go through that. The pain is, the hot stove effect is there. And particularly from my lens where I was like, okay, at the end of the day, this happened on my watch. I fucked it up. The one common thing is me. Don't do it again, because you're just gonna eventually, somehow, some way, fuck it up. And I enjoyed my freedom. I enjoyed like this kind of like, I'm not gonna get into the risk associated with a long-term committed relationship. While I was dating and while I was out there living kind of this like polyamorous, dating a bunch of people life, very, very transparent, very honest, I came to realize that of competing priorities, and people have priorities like, I want to have fun and I want to have a lot of sex, and I want to do my own thing and I want to be my own boss or whatever. But there is a priority of partnership, and I realized that was my number one priority, and that I needed to sacrifice these other priorities for that. And so it took a while for me to discover what my new priorities were. And then once that was there, I was like, okay, how do I be a good partner? What can I change from the last time? How can I be more accountable to myself and another person? And can I love another person the way they deserve to be loved? And those are still open questions, But I was willing to take the risk again and go with what I deeply wanted is partnership. And it didn't have to be a marriage, right? It could have been partnership in any kind of way, but that was the requirement for being with my partner, is that, that was the admission price.
Yeah, I mean, I talk about it with my husband a lot. And again, like you said, who knows? Talk to me when I'm 85 and we'll see if we've been successful.
Right.
But I do think there's something wonderful when you're attempting, let's say, big things in any way, shape, or form, to have somebody who's standing beside you and who's not instead of aligned to some outcome besides the two of you surviving for some period of time. And so with him, that sort of foundation is it's just, there's no more distraction. I'm not chasing around other people doing this other stuff that I used to do with competing priorities. And so I really love being in partnership. And we were talking the other day about, there was like the girl boss movement. Remember that? Like Sophia Amoruso, girl boss, going to go be our own thing. And then I think the counter movement to that was sort of this alpha male movement that we're in right now, which is like, manly men, women, blah, blah, blah. And then I kind of think that there might be this progression movement of partnership in some way, shape, or form. And I don't know what that would look like, but we've been in a period of like increasing divorce rates and separation of sexes for a long time. As I talk to a lot of my most successful friends, one of the biggest things many of them talk to me about is their partnership. And they all look very different, right? Which I think is great. What is it about being in a marriage that you find is beneficial? What does partnership even mean to you? On
the transactional side, my wife has a very high EQ, way higher than mine. And I learn and get a lot of value for that. But I think I get a lot of value out of loving somebody, right? Like, I want to prove to myself that I am capable of that. And so that in itself is my quest. But aside from like somebody standing behind me when I'm trying to do the thing, like the thing, that's, for other people, the thing is it, and they got somebody to help them do the thing and conquer the world. And I see that model on Twitter or Instagram, like, you got to have a good woman behind you to do the fucking thing. I want to have a good woman to show that I am capable of love and having the human experience. And that's what I want. You know, that's what I'm trying to do, because I can be pretty robotic and pretty out there. And I have a natural inclination to chase the thing and be the thing and change the world and have an impact and yada, yada, and all those great grandiose things. But like at the core level, I want to understand somebody, love them through all their facets, somebody to get to peek inside me and help love me through all my facets and have that partnership.
Do you tell her that?
Yeah, she knows this. She knows that. She knows like that's the.
She walked in, she'd be like, "Yep."
That was my whole thing. Like we were just dating. I really didn't want to. I didn't want to get married. I didn't even want to become monogamous. I was just like, I just want to be closer to you. I just want to have a partnership with you. I just want to be closer, and I want to love you. And that was kind of the base thing. And then how that can happen is where we're at. You know, where that could be fostered and grow is here. And so, you know, and you know, my mindset changed. I had the mindset like when my first marriage, like if you had a coach or counseling for a marriage, you something was wrong. Like they go counseling, somebody was counseling. I'm like, oh, they got problems. They already got a counselor, you know, whatever. And now I'm like, you're a fucking idiot, Bill Perkins. Like you are so stupid. Like nobody does anything great alone. Kobe Bryant has a coach. Babe Ruth had a coach. Fucking Martin Luther King had student nonviolent coordinating committee. You know, Genghis Khan had the Mongol horde. Like nobody does anything great alone. Like why the fuck do you think you can have a great marriage alone? Like you have all these resources. Why aren't you bringing in extra resources and coaches to make your marriage great? And I was like, yeah, I was a fucking idiot. And so like one of the things, you know, I do is like we bring resources to bear to help us with our marriage to being humans, because being humans is tough. Like you have competing desires, you have this baseline sexuality that's kind of crazy, that's changing in influence. You change over time. You know, certain things you might be annoying or grating to that person or whatever, and just like learning how to communicate. You know, you say something, you say it one way, it's like, why are you barking at me? I'm not barking. This is how I talk all the time. You know what I mean? There's a lot going on and a lot of things that are like people study in labs and have tons of clients, et cetera, and are good at like helping people have great relationships. And I don't want a good anything. I want a fucking great something. So nobody does anything great alone. So now I have a coach. And I tell all my friends, I'm like, you should have a relationship coach. I don't care how good your relationship is. You should have a coach.
We have one too. Every single week.
Yeah, you should have a coach.
First thing in the morning, early Monday morning, which is like the last thing I would typically want to do on a Monday morning. I want to get going, but I think it sets the right precedent for what the priority is.
Well, you're trying to do something great.
That's right.
And so you're bringing in resources. And so, you know, business, math, tests, SATs, I don't care what it is. Like, you know, you can do something good alone.
Yeah.
Great? No. Even Jesus had disciples.
What about, last question, do you have anything that you guys do consistently that's maybe normal to you but would be weird to other people? You have a coach. Do you have check-ins? Do you have some safe word that you use with each other when you're in a place and you don't want to be there anymore? Is there anything that's uniquely Lara and Bill?
We have this thing about not like doing our best not to create scars. Not that we haven't, but like I think that relationships die from 1,000 cuts, not like this big thing. You know what I mean? Like even relationships that they have, oh, they cheated on me or whatever, it's like probably the 1,000 cuts that's created the environment for the infidelity or whatever the big thing is. And so we have this thing of like, if things are getting heated or whatever, like, are you trying to, you know, like we'll call each other out and hold each other accountable, like not trying to create a scar. Like we talk about this later, et cetera. I think adherence to that kind of like, let's not create these cuts.
Well, it's really cool to hear somebody like you who's had so much success, is so intelligent, talk about this stuff, because it's not that normal. And it's typically stuff, if you had talked to Cody and me, you know, 2 or 3 years ago, I would have been like, what the are we talking about? Like, why are we talking about making money, buying businesses, building bigger things? But I realize it's all super related. You know, it was interesting. Last I was talking to Lara, her emotional intelligence is actually really impressive, even from talking briefly, because she was saying a few things where she's like, well, I felt a certain sort of way about that when some interaction you guys had 1 billion years ago. And I was sort of laughing because I said, well, I had the exact same thing happen with me and my husband, and I was annoyed, jealous, angry. She was like, well, you know, I might have felt that way. I was like, God, you're so enlightened about the way that you communicate. Were you guys like that when you first met? Is that why she became your one?
When we first met, we were wild and crazy. Like I was in a situation where I was like, I'll never get married again. You know what I mean? Like the hot stove, my back was still burning, from falling down on the hot coals of my own doing. Fortunately, Lara was in a field where she had free time. I was in a mode of like, I just want to go hang out and travel. And we got to spend a lot of time together. Despite the wild and crazy times, we were hanging out and getting to know each other. And, I saw it, right? Like I saw, you know what I mean? It was something that I needed, that I wanted, I became obviously physically attractive, but I became attracted to her soul, her way of being, her kindness, the whole package. And I was like, okay, I want to get closer. I want to be partners with you. Like, even running around the world as a madman, I want you to be my wingwoman, as running around the world as a bad person. And then like when I'm hanging out with my kids, I want you with me. And when I went here, and it was like I always just wanted her around all the time. And then I realized, like, even beneath it just being her is like, oh, I really crave and love partnership. Right? And it took a while for me to figure that out, because I was just like, no, freedom is number one, and freedom is like, it's intoxicating. It's like I told somebody, when you walk through an airport, you smell that Cinnabon, and you're just like, ooh, Cinnabon, cinnamon. And you just like want to go over there, and you're just like, that's freedom. Like that's it. But like, Cinnabon will make you fat as and it'll destroy you, right? And so like, I, as much as I love my freedom, what I really, really craved and what was sustainable, and what I realized was like my number one priority was partnership. And so I had to sacrifice some of these lesser priorities in order to get there. So there's this balance, right? And so partnership won out. And Lara was, we both happened to be in the right place at the right time in each other's lives. And, at least one of us was fighting for it when the other one was kind of like,
Totally.
At least one of us was fighting for it, right? Like,
yep.
We just didn't let it go. And so we built, a lot of people are like, oh, you found this person. We're always like, both of us, particularly me, but Lara too, is like, we didn't find shit. We built this brick by brick.
100%.
So I don't believe in that fairy tale crap. I say like, yes, like the odds that you're meeting there's 8 billion of us, 4 billion are female, 1 billion something in your range. Like the odds that you just happen to meet the person at work and that was they're your soul. No, that's not it. You meet somebody, then you start building. And if you're not a builder, it'll eventually fall apart, because you have to constantly be building.
That's so true.
So when people, we go around and people are like, oh, we love the way you interact or the way you guys hang out and how you're in, it's like, yeah, you can do this too. You can build it. The only thing special is our dedication to building the relationship. And we made that was a decision.
Yeah, we get a lot of hate on the internet from, whenever we talk about our relationship and say, here are the things that we do that we work on. And there are some practices around that we find useful. It's wild how many people say, this sounds like work, not a relationship. And it's like, yeah, same thing.
It is.
Yes, exactly. I don't agree. I don't disagree at all.
Yeah, warm feelings, warm or lusty feelings will only get you so far.
Yeah, 100%.
I do want to circle back all the way to some of these like notions about divorces and just ask you some questions. Chris Williamson said, when men win the lottery, there's not that big of a difference. But when women win the lottery, divorce happens. I feel like that could be because they're like, okay, I don't need to have a man now because I have some finances. And moving on to like people with 9 or more premarital partners. If you're having like less amount of premarital partners or, none before marriage, maybe that could be for like a religious reason or something that there's like a guilt factor. So maybe divorce just isn't held like as highly. Like I feel like divorce is so nuanced. You know what I mean? So any stat that I read, I'm like, okay, but read between the lines. Like we're seeing the top richest people here. I imagine they're not doing much besides working. If you're not seeing it, if like you're their wife or you're Jeff Bezos, who's had a divorce, you see how often they're working and what they're doing. They're probably not giving a lot of time to like their family and, allocating that very well. So yeah, they probably have had a lot of divorce.
Yeah. When I look at the statistics, I try to not say that correlation is causation, right? It's super important. What I just want to know about is what are the odds? And I guess you have to start at first principles, which is like basically, do you think that divorce is inherently a good or a bad thing? Do people want to avoid divorce or not? And at my core, having been through it, I think we want to avoid divorce. And perhaps we also definitely want to avoid marrying the wrong person. We want to avoid those two things. So if we assume, one, you married the right person, it's just hard, then the question is, how do you stay with somebody through the hard? And if you're going to work 70, 80 hours a week, how do you set expectations where you two can stay happily together? I mean, we know the stats too for children. Your kids are more likely to commit suicide or self-harm if you get divorced. Your kids have a higher likelihood of becoming divorced themselves if you have been divorced as parents. The happiness indicator for men in particular is much happier when they stay married. Single women who have never been married and have kids actually have the highest happiness as evidenced by studies. And so I think the question really becomes, in my mind, it's twofold. Yes, when you have a lot more options, you probably are more likely to get divorced. So I think it makes sense. You've had sex with other people. You realize that there's probably not just one human only for you in this world. But the problem with that is, how many people are actually happy swiping left and right on Tinder all day? Do options really make us happy? Does it actually make us happy to get divorced from the person that we said we were going to do life with forever and keep moving on to somebody else? And I think the answer to that is no. Now, I don't have the data to support that, but I think as a society, we're lonelier than ever. We're having less sex than ever. And I think we actually would be happier if we committed to a partner over a long period of time. We did a lot of analysis on who that partner is and who we are and coming together as two fully formed humans. But once you say yes, and this is from a divorced person, I think you want to try to figure out how to work together to grow in partnership. And so for me, I think that's the difference, is getting divorced is awful. And so how do we make sure that if we're going to say I do, and you decide to do that, and you vet the human properly and they vet you, that you figure out how to work through it together? Because I don't think it's ever easy. I think it's a lot of work. I loved this quote. I stole this from Shane Parrish, where he basically says, there's two types of stability, active and passive. People get in trouble when they confuse the two. Relationships, for example, require attention and care. If you assume that your relationship is passively stable, you'll wake up one day to divorce papers. And that's true.
You also had some good advice in here about what women have to know before going through a divorce.
Yeah. This one, people hate on the internet too, but typically what I've found is that women do not take care of the overall finances or understand the overall finances. Now, the data shows us that women have the purchasing power in the household. If you are Amazon or Walmart, you actually want to get to the female because she's typically the one doing a lot of the household spending. But the one with the understanding of the full financial picture is typically the man. And so one of the things I think that makes divorce really gnarly is anytime you have uncertainty, then you have tension, right? It's why, if there's uncertainty in the market, then you see the stock market fall. It's the same thing in relationships. And so when one party is at a knowledge disadvantage from the other, then you try to lie, cheat, steal, figure out the difference between the two. And so as a woman, if you're going to go through divorce, and in advance, I'm sorry. And also if you're a man going to go through divorce, there's a couple things you can do to make this a lot less emotional. The biggest trigger for divorces getting gnarly is money and child custody. I don't know much about child custody because I don't have any, so I won't speak to that. But from a monetary standpoint, it's really important that you guys both know at all times, what's your financial situation? Who has access to the bank accounts? Who doesn't? How much money do you guys both bring in? How much money do you both spend? And that knowledge, once you have it, can give you a level of sort of ease and understanding in the marriage. You can say, listen, this is what we have. We all know what the rules are in these states. We either have a prenup or we don't, but it's probably a 50-50 split. So let's just calm the emotions because this is what we both have. And the second thing that I think is really useful if you're going to go through a divorce is making sure you go through mediation and not a full-on trial with, litigators. So it's actually really important. People try to go out and get the gnarliest, meanest divorce attorney that they can get. And that's actually a terrible idea. You'll spend a ton of money on your divorce attorneys. And instead, you guys decided to commit to something for life. Try to exit it as peacefully as you entered it. And so when I did mine, it wasn't peaceful. Ours was pretty gnarly, but we managed to do it all through mediation. And because we both chose attorneys and I chose mine first, then I said, I'm committed to mediating through this. And so it'll be private, it'll be behind closed doors, and we'll be adults. And we will have a conversation as opposed to scream at each other and let a judge determine the outcome of our fate. We're not children. And so I think that's really important. Go for mediation and try to get the other party to do the same thing.
What are your thoughts on prenups?
I have one in my current marriage. It was actually something that Chris was pretty big on saying that we should have. He basically didn't want any question about, economic differences between the two of us. I don't really have emotional ties to it one way or the other. I think, we always say that if this doesn't work out, like this is it. This is kind of the last hurrah. I'm not interested in doing it 3 times. But I think prenups are nice because anytime you can have expectations set, it just makes sure incentives are aligned. And it seems to me a little bit of a red flag if anybody would be concerned about getting a prenup on either side. And they might say, well, I'm concerned because you say it's going to be for life. Well, yeah, it is going to be for life. But if so, let's just go in and make sure that if the worst happens and you, the other person, are the one that, wants to get a divorce, that we're clear and we don't have this fight at the end. So I'm actually pro prenups. I've had them. They're cheap. They're easy. You can draft them up really quickly yourself on a piece of paper. Here's the stuff we care about. You get them to a mutual set of attorneys. The attorneys are just there to paper it, not give you a ton of advice on the subject afterwards, so you don't make it expensive and contentious. And I think it can be really straightforward, just like a business partnership.
So on here, you said that your therapist believes that 100% of divorces happen because of infidelity. And that kind of stopped me in my tracks reading that.
So what she said explicitly was, in a divorce, infidelity is part of the equation 100% of the time. Now, I don't think she could say that they always happen because of infidelity, but that infidelity is there. And then she said, men cheat to stay and women cheat to leave, which I thought was fascinating. Obviously, the statistics on this are going to be hard, but she's the sweet little Texan. If you could picture like big blonde hair, kind of an older lady, a little twang, lots of pink in the office, and super religious. She was my therapist when I was going through my divorce. And, I was really struggling with it and with the fact that I had made a promise to a human forever and was going to break that promise. And that was horrifying to me. And I said, I don't think there's infidelity happening on either side of the equation, but I don't know. And she said, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because it's almost always there. Once 2 people are pulling apart, it's happened for a long time. And when you guys get here, she also said that men usually come to therapy to try to stay and women come to therapy to try to leave. That's her 2 cents. We'll see if it's true or not. Now I'm a big believer in therapy upfront, no matter what, for every single relationship. And I don't think you have to do it like, hi, nice to meet you. I'd like to date. Also, let's go to therapy right away. But once you start getting pretty serious, moving in together, thinking about long term, it just helps to have a guide.
You kind of say the same thing when you were talking with Bill about having like a coach for business as well. And I like that analogy between you two.
Yeah, it's 100%. I mean, we do a ton of stuff to try to make our relationship the best that it can possibly be. And Bill said it nicely about a relationship. He doesn't want a good relationship. He wants a great relationship. And I want the exact same thing. I saw firsthand, we could go over deal of the week, basically. So the deal of the week for this one is I was at a finance company and this company was privately owned and the founder was a billionaire, really, really successful. He was my boss, the CEO. And there was a partnership. So all the partners inside of the finance company basically have shares and get distributions and have transparency into what's happening in the business to some degree or the other. Well, the guy starts going through a divorce. And so for this period, none of the partners could take distributions because they had to value the business. They had to assess everything that's going on. And we basically got a giant colonoscopy because him and his wife got in a super contentious divorce. What I thought was interesting, he went through this divorce that he was probably married for 20, 30 years. And when he got married, he didn't have a prenup and they didn't sign documentation. This is super technical, but if you guys have a business or you have investors or you are an investor in an enterprise, I always make the partners of the founders that I invest in and the founders or investors in a fund, usually their partner needs to sign documentation too, waiving their rights to the business. And this is really important because, I saw it happen firsthand. They basically, it really fucked with the business that they were going through this divorce. She wanted to be able to make decisions based on the business. It actually hurt hundreds of us that worked there. And so when I went and was a partner at the next private equity fund, they make you sign this paperwork up front that basically says, hey, we need to have you and your partner sign this. And this says that they have no access to your shares except, through their divorce proceedings at their own time, XYZ. And so it's really important if you guys are going to do that you get something similar. And if you have to think that somewhere between, 30 to 50% of marriages end in divorce, your likelihood to have this happen if you're going to be partner of a partnership for 5, 10, 15 years is actually really high. And so making sure you get the right paper is super, super important.
How much do you think it ended up like setting you back?
Oh, the divorce itself? I mean, I could probably go back and look at the numbers, but I think the divorce itself probably cost me $20,000 to $60,000 in legal fees. But it was in Texas. Texas is pretty quick. So I think it happened in 90 days, something like that.
And then career-wise, much do you think that set you back?
Well, I had to give up a lot of my assets. So I gave up more in the divorce because I was the one that wanted it. So he took more. But I think, that's a multi-million-dollar expense for sure with breaking up the assets. And then from a business perspective, we actually worked together. So this was kind of wild. I ran the Latin American business and he worked inside of another district in the US. And so for a period, we had to work together. And then he left the company for a minute. And the part that was the hardest is the company brought him back after some drama happened at the company. And they brought him back without telling me. And I was, like a senior person at the firm. And so I never forgave him for that. And I ended up leaving and putting my number 2 in charge because it's really hard. I mean, could you imagine working with your ex all the time? At the time, I think I lost all the friends I had in Dallas at the time because they were members of the same country club. They ended up sort of quote unquote siding with him. And whether or not they would say that, I mean, it's Texas. So it's more like, bless your heart, not answering any phone calls. And then, I ended up moving into a small place in Dallas to sort of stabilize myself. I have 2 friends that I kept from that time period. And then I ended up leaving Dallas because I just felt like I couldn't be the person I wanted to be in this town that I had been somebody else. There were too many memories. And so I ended up leaving. And then I was building up this business and he came back into it. And I didn't want that. And so I ended up leaving that firm too. So my whole life kind of had to change after that. And thank God. I mean, I think sometimes the universe kicks you in the ass when you won't do it yourself. Like I needed to leave because we weren't the right fit. I needed to leave the firm because our ethics did not align. I needed to leave Dallas because it's not my city and it never was. And so now I'm in Austin and it's just much more my vibe. And so thankfully it all worked out, but it was really, really hard. And I had this little thing I wrote about it, which says it better than I can. So maybe I'll actually read this to you guys. So I write this thing called the Contrarian Tinkering Weekly Snippet, and this is part of it. So anyway, you guys can hear. This is a little personal, so sorry. I'm married to a handsome man with a beautiful house, country clubs, Range Rovers, and friends who look like they're on The Real Housewives. But tonight, I'm walking into the living room as the sun sets to break the heart of a man I promised forever to. He's far from perfect, but in this moment, all I feel is agony. I speak softly. It's not working. I want a divorce. And I'm leaving tonight. As soon as the words leave my mouth, I see the 6'1", 245-pound man crumple to the ground, sobbing, begging me to stay. It is an awful thing to watch someone so strong whom you once loved break, and I've never felt greater guilt or shame than in that moment. With eyes so blurry I can barely see, I leave empty-handed out of the door of the house I just finished decorating it into a home. I spent nights sleepless and alone, and when I told my own mother, she also cried. Tears, that's all I felt like I had to give. I never shared all the hardness in that marriage with her. It was my burden to carry, but I also didn't quite realize the moment would change my life forever. I left a man, a city, all my things, and eventually a career I spent more than a decade building. And I had to lose everything before I came to the knowledge I hope I can leave some of you guys with today that, I didn't have at the time. After I got divorced, everything changed for me. I started getting pushed out of the company. I wasn't right for the culture anymore. And candidly, I didn't fit. I had built up a business with nearly $1 billion in assets under management. And despite that, I took nothing with me. No severance, no equity, no clients, no assets. I had built someone else's castle twice and walked away with nothing. And I swore I'd never do it again. And in that moment, I knew I'd go all in on my own thing. I'd share it with the fucking world, and I'd never play small for another person again. Ownership, the only true key to freedom. And maybe I share some of that too, because the truth of it is that when you get divorced, all that's going to happen to you too if you end up going through this awful thing. And so I'm sorry in advance, but sometimes when you know what's coming, it makes it easier to bear. And nobody told me things like that. Like I was, I don't think I told anybody when eventually I told my parents that I was going to get divorced and I filed the next week. It usually takes a few years to build up the courage. And then I can kind of promise you also that you'll be okay on the other side, both of them. I think he's happier now. He's happily married. He's got the white picket fence he wants. He's got the kids. He's got the wife at home. It's great. It's exactly what he wanted from life. And I was never going to be that person. And that is okay too. I also don't think we have to villainize the people that were not right for us. And that's often what people do too. And that really just goes to show that you have a little bit of shame and guilt that you're projecting out. And I try to not have that anymore. Maybe we go on to lighter subjects, which is how to try to not get divorced. Because I loved the, I don't think it was Goldie Hawn, but I can never remember. So I'll just say it's Goldie Hawn. But she said that the key to staying married was that her and her husband never wanted to get divorced at the same time. And that key of one person always wanting to stick it in, I think is really, really important.
So we're going to talk about another thing where people freaked out about on the internet. And it's like that one daily action that you and your husband do. It's called a team method. And the comments were crazy. Some people loved this. Some people were like, wait, what the heck? Like, this sounds like an assignment. So let us know, what is team? How do you approach this?
So it actually does help us. And I can vouch for it. We have a therapist by the name of Brandy Salazar that we used to go to, who's become a friend, actually. She's the one that came up with this method, and we tweaked it a little bit. Basically what happens is in a relationship, I find that, you guys know this, you're in a relationship, and what do you fight about? Like the same things again and again and again. The little things are typically what build up to create the big issues. And I found that in a relationship, it was sort of like tiny nags all day. Like, I wish you would shut the door. What happened here? And Chris and I are, we are not peaceful fighters. We are intense. And so we found we were fighting a lot about little stuff because we were letting it boil. We were little teapots, and the issues would boil and boil and boil until eventually it would be like, and it would boil over. And so we started doing this thing team. And I can pretty much guarantee you, if you guys here ever see us fight, it's because we forget to do this for like about a week. And then we start to get annoyed with each other. And basically what it is it's this tiny method. It could take 5 minutes, it could take 15, but every single day we get together, typically at the end of the day, and we sit down with a glass of wine, look at each other, and it starts with T for touch. So basically you sit next to each other, you put your hands on each other. Sometimes we sit like, my feet are on them or something. And that's just to remind you guys that you're not roommates. Like, you guys are in this together. There's physical intimacy here that you're not going to do with another human. And then E is for education. It means that you share something with the person about something interesting that happened to you that day. And the goal is really that you try to do something intriguing. So I might say to him tonight, like, God, we have this podcast today. And did you actually know that when a woman wins the lottery, she's like, 2x more likely to get divorced? And then we would talk about that. And it reminds you that your partner is a fully evolving human all the time. And that, I think, helps because there's a natural tendency for humans to want novelty. That is how we're wired. And so you seek novelty in others. But when your human comes home with something interesting for you every day, it reminds you that human is smart and talented and can be new every single day too, in a way that like your work colleague, isn't going to tempt you. And then A stands for appreciation. So then we have to both say something nice to each other. And typically, if you're in a good spirit, you say something really lovely about the other person. And if you're kind of, fighting a little bit, you just can't use the same thing. You have to come up with something new every day. But it might be very small. Thank you for taking out the trash. Thank you for sitting down and doing team with me. Because there's typically always something your significant other is doing to help you, and we largely ignore it and focus on the negative. And then lastly is metrics. So this is the hard part. So this is where we'd be like, all right, I keep a list of stuff that might annoy me that Chris is doing or that happened that day. And when I am not elevated and thoughtful and we're doing team, I just keep it for the end of the day. And it's a 180. And so if we're not doing team, then we bring it up in that moment. Wait a second, I thought you were going to do this, or I thought you were going to do this. And it's like tiny. And if you hold it until the end of the day when you're not elevated, then it just becomes an easy conversation as opposed to an argument. And so I think if you can get your partner to do this, it's really cool. The other benefit of it is that you never have dinners where you don't have anything to say. Like it gives you a reason every single day to end with your partner and to have sort of an interesting, thoughtful conversation as opposed to, hey babe, how was your day? Cool. How was your day? All right. Yeah. Like it was cool. It was fine. Whatever. And you lapse into this boring life. So I highly, highly recommend. Do you do anything in your relationships? You have a dude.
I do, but like not marriage, but I do something personally that's called Report. And I saw it on TikTok. R is for reading, E is for eating, P is for play, O is for like obsessing, R is for recommending, that second R, and then T is for treating. So it's like a little personal check-in that I like doing throughout the week. I'm a big journaler. Like I'm a big, onto your M, I'm a big metrics person. So I'm very much like, you can't manage what you don't measure. So it's like, okay, in this moment, like what am I reading? What am I eating? What am I playing? My parents, though, at the dinner table every night, my dad was always like, what are you doing for your mind, your body, and your spirit? And I think that helped us, first off, to like kind of see what our what our parents were saying. Like, what are they doing for their mind, body, and spirit? And not like spirit even religiously, but what are they doing to like get in the Zen mode? Like, you don't want to have, like, my dad worked a lot growing up. What is he doing to not freak out? And seeing like my parents kind of give their answers and hearing like what my siblings had to say, first off, made us closer, like as a family, but also was nice seeing how like my parents got to know like the side of each other as well.
Dude, I love hearing that because I adore my parents, but I don't think they had anything like this. And a lot of the comments on this are, something like, my parents would roll over in their graves if they thought that you were doing a daily check-in with a scorecard and a fucking, report card at the end of the day. This is awful. And my point is, one, maybe they're all better than us. That's totally true. But two, there's just so much more noise today. We are like battling constantly noise. Every single day, there's temptation on Instagram. And temptation doesn't mean like infidelity either. It could just mean like something else that will vie for your attention away from your other human. And then, of course, we're traveling more than ever. We have separate lives more than ever. It's just fast and intense. And I think if we don't take the time to focus on our number one partnership, then everything else falls apart. And that's why I think, those top guys that, the list of the 11 richest people who by and large have been divorced is interesting because I remember I met Jeff Bezos really briefly at Summit like a million years ago. And he was still married to Mackenzie. And there were two things I loved about what he said. He said, the reason that he was married to Mackenzie was because he wanted to be with somebody who could break him out of the third world prison. And she was that person. And I thought that was an incredible quote. And then the second thing he said about her was, I knew that she was the one because, our kids were out somewhere. They were learning woodworking or something with a knife, something with tools. And he was like, aren't you nervous about the kids doing X, Y, and Z? And she's like, well, I'd rather a kid have 4 fingers on one hand than no common sense. I thought, dude, this chick kind of seems badass. In my opinion, like one of my best girlfriends said, this is so inappropriate, but she was like, same dick, different day. She's like, if you get divorced from this guy and you move on to somebody else, like we all have different problems and issues and quirks. And so the closer you get to somebody, you realize we're all super flawed and you just pick your human that you think is the best person for you. And then you work at it. And everything else is a fairy tale. And so I think it'd be really useful if more humans had tools that were given to us. Like, where was the class when we were growing up about how to be in successful relationships? There was no class. Instead, I learned a bunch of stuff that I couldn't apply continuously. And I wish I could go back to the next generation and say, here's how to set boundaries. Here's how to actually know what you want. Here's how to have a conversation with somebody that's an elevated conversation, but in a way that is peaceful. Those are things we were kind of taught in leadership, maybe if we went to a corporation, but they're the skills that are going to last the test of time.
I think it's interesting too, because as young people, we only have, especially in America, like I'm only living with my parents. My grandparents aren't living with us. So I only see one example of what a relationship's going to be. So oftentimes when you're going into a relationship with somebody else, like the two of you together only have one example of, adult relationships and what they are going to be. And if you were back when you were my age, if you were 25, what advice would you give yourself around trying to find a partner and aiming to, not have that partner be somebody you're going to get divorced to?
Especially for women, I'd say don't rush into this shit. And I think our generation is realizing that. Now, you don't want to wait forever. There is a real thing as a biological clock. That's real if you want to have a kid one way or the other. But, I was not the person I am today when I got married the first go round. And I became, like they talk about it, Eat, Pray, Love, that movie, like the amorphous self that just like meshes into another human. I just meshed into another human. And I let so much of who he was become who I was. And at some point I woke up and I started thinking, this is not what I want at all. And that's one, it's not really fair to the dude because, he thinks he's getting X and you haven't been honest enough with yourself to say, I am not that. And I watched all of these women in Dallas, one, not want to be friends with me while I was going through this. And then I watched a ton of them then get divorced later on because they thought they wanted to stay home and have this like wealthy, lifestyle and raise kids. And at some point they realized, oh my gosh, this isn't everything that I want. And so the second thing that I'd say is you don't have to work. You don't have to be a boss babe or girl boss or any of that nonsense people talk about. But I personally think it's really useful for you to have a very strong sense of self and that self to not only be wrapped up in being married and having kids. I have just seen that not work a million times. It doesn't have to be monetary. It could be that you're really into gardening, working out, but make sure that your full identity is not given to others, because guess what? You cannot allow somebody else to be the source of your happiness. You are the key to that. And so I think that's why we're seeing this rise in antidepressants. And it's like, there's this silent generation. I think it will be the next thing that comes out. Right now, we're starting to hear about like the alpha men, and we're starting to hear about testosterone levels lowering, and we're starting to hear about incels and men not having sex in increasing amounts. And we're starting to hear about men having a tough time, sort of as like the silent depressive generation. And I think the next thing we're going to realize is that women have the same thing.
I agree. Like the loneliness epidemic being geared toward men. I'm like, okay, there's like a loneliness epidemic in general. Like I feel super happy where I'm at, and I have friends and everything like that. And then I think about if I wasn't living in a major city like New York, how would I operate? Like I think I would be somebody that would be totally in the loneliness epidemic with how often I'm working and kind of like my hobbies. Like thank goodness I live in a city where like that kind of lifestyle that I really like living is done by a lot of other people, so I can have friends. But so much of my life is like very, very alone. It's like, I don't know. I don't think the loneliness epidemic is definitely geared toward men.
No, I think I don't think it's fair that they have to be tough about it all the time. I don't think that's reasonable. I think, you can be a strong man and also have emotions 100%. But what's wild is how old are you, Rachel?
25.
Yeah. So 25. And what I see end up happening for a lot of these women is they get into like late 20s, early 30s, into their 40s. And if you look at the users by and large of sleeping pills, antidepressants, Adderall, a lot of these users end up being middle-aged women. And I've seen it happen personally to multiple friends, and I'm certainly no doctor. But what ends up happening is they're like a little sad after the kids have gotten old enough to not need them all the time. And then, so what do? They go to the doctor, and the doctor says, here is an antidepressant. Well, antidepressants often make it hard to sleep. So then they get layered some sort of sleep medication on top of it. But then they're like lethargic and sleeping funny. And so then they get layered Adderall because they're distracted. They can't focus. And we give them this cocktail of drugs that feels to me like what we used to do to veterans when they came back with PTSD. And we're over-medicating these women who are now increasingly part of a loneliness epidemic that I don't think anybody is even talking about yet. So in the future, I don't think it's going to be men versus women. I don't think it's going to be boss babes and alpha men. I think the focus, hopefully, is going to be on strong partnerships and humans who can be honest about where they're sitting in life. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens in the coming generations. I guess where I would leave this for people today is start with the end in mind in a couple things with divorce. And the end in mind basically means this. We now know the statistics are 30 to 50% divorce rates, something like that, right? If that's likely, 1, you can protect the house. You can get a prenup. You can make sure you vet your partners. But 2, you're crazy if you think that you can be with another human and not work at building a life together. When 2 humans collide and there is more surface area, aka more time spent together, there's naturally more friction. This is a law of physics. The more things touch against each other, the more they rub against each other. The more they rub against each other, the more friction, and thus the more intense actions on either side of the house. And because of that, I think choosing to determine a partner who will grow with you and work on the relationship is crucial going forward on both sides, whether you're a man or a woman. And the questions that I would be asking are you open to having coaching or therapy? Coaching might make people feel better. That word, going forward, how do you think about relationships? How do you want to work through being partnered with somebody? Because let me tell you what, the most powerful thing I have ever had in my life, and my husband and I talk about this constantly, is my partnership with him. Don't get me wrong. We're pissed at each other sometimes. We get in each other's faces sometimes. But when my multiple businesses have things going sideways, when we're getting sued, when somebody's getting sick, having another human to stand beside and knowing that you choose one other person to go through time with is a fucking superpower. All right. Thank you guys for joining in. This is the Big Deal podcast. Also, little spoiler, I'm going to give you guys a free download of the team method if you guys want it. The link will be in the show notes, so you can go to the team method, grab that framework if you guys want to use it. We'll put it in the show notes for you. Also, please like, subscribe, and share. We want to make sure that more people hear about this, and maybe we can decrease that divorce rate a little bit, huh? Okay, till next week.
That I have it, you know that I got it, no need to look all in the bag. Stunting like this cause I work so hard, I'm the best, I only speak facts. If I say that I have it, you know that I got it, no need to look all in the bag.
the things that I do in the morning now are really focused on creative work, writing. That's when I feel most creative. So like this book got basically written from like 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. over the course of 3 years. To me, in order to be able to write and be creative at 5, I needed to like get up at 4, and it was the ice bath was like the biggest thing for me.
Welcome back to the Big Deal Podcast. This is Codie Sanchez, and this podcast is for those of you who want to change your life and make a dent on the world. Okay, today we have somebody on who is going to tell us, how do we actually achieve the things we want out of life this year? How do we use research, data, and studies in order to create frameworks that make us able to live the life that we want by our actions every single day? We're going to steal habits from my friend Sahil Bloom, who is an author of the brand new book, 5 Types of Wealth. He is also a former private equity investor. He has millions of followers online, and he's known for one thing really interesting in my mind, which is taking frameworks from some of the best minds out there and applying them to everyday life. These frameworks led him to get mentors like Tim Cook, famously of Apple, running the joint. Also another friend of mine, Arthur Brooks, from Harvard, who famously wrote a book with Oprah. And so Sahil has this unique ability with his sort of private equity-like mind to go out into the world, pull together how high performers use data and frameworks in order to make our lives better. And when he talks about wealth, it's not just the same way we typically do on this podcast. We're not talking about just money, but we're talking about living an extensive life. So I think you guys will really enjoy this conversation. This is so applicable and so tactical for hitting your goals in 2025. Let's get into it. Okay, I want to start out with a concept that you got in front of millions of people and kind of changed how I think about life, actually. And I think for a ton of people on Twitter, it was the same thing, which is your idea of time billionaire. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. The first time I came across this was, I think it was on the Tim Ferriss Show podcast. An investor named Graham Duncan, who is a very successful investor, talked about this idea of the time billionaire. And as I went through the whole book research process, I spoke to Graham, and he basically said that during his career as an investor, he would interview hundreds of young people that were coming and joining his firm. And they all had the same goal, which was to one day become billionaires, dollar billionaires, to go make $1 billion. And what he said was that they were all billionaires in one very important way. They were time billionaires. They quite literally had billions of seconds left in their life. A billion seconds is roughly 30 years. So like when you're 20, you have maybe 2 billion seconds left. When you're 50, you have 1 billion seconds. And that idea is a really important one because what it implies is that time is your most precious asset. It is quite literally the only thing that you can't get back. And yet, as young people in particular, we never think about our time. We basically live in this world where time is nothing to us. We think we're immortal. And then at the very end, it's the only thing that you think about, but it's too late. It's gone at that point. And so the call to action around that idea of the time billionaire is to recognize that time is your most precious asset, to become aware of it. And the question that I go and ask people, especially young people, is, would you trade lives with Warren Buffett? He's worth $130 billion. He has access to anyone in the world. He reads and learns for a living. He flies around on private jets, does all these fancy things. But you wouldn't trade lives with him because he's 95 years old. There's no way you would agree to trade the amount of time you have left for all of the money in the world. So you know in the back of your mind that time has incalculable value. And yet, on a daily basis, how much time are you wasting? Sitting on your phone, scrolling around, worrying about other people, stressing over dumb things, comparing yourself to others, all of these stupid things that we do when time is the only thing that matters in the end.
It's so good. You had this visual I remember from back in the day where you basically have, a father and a son, and you see the flip, right? So from the father taking care of the son to the son taking care of the father. And it was so poignant, which is what I like about a lot of your frameworks and the book, is you put these visuals to them too, where it's kind of like a kick in the gut. You're like, all right, Sahil, copy. I got it. Like, no more scrolling. Take it easy. But I really like that. You also said this quote that I loved, which was, every single thing you do today is something that your 90-year-old self will wish they could go back and do. The good old days are happening right now. I was wondering for you, since most people never think about time, you think about it a lot. When did that flip and why?
In 2021, I had a single conversation that changed my life. I was out for a drink with an old friend, and we were just catching up, and he was asking how I was doing. And I had spent the last 7 years of my life rising through the ranks in the finance world. I was working 80 to 100 hours a week. I was making more and more money, and thinking that that was how I was going to reach the land of success and happiness. And a lot of other areas of my life had started to suffer. Namely, I was living very far away from my parents, 3,000 miles away, and they were getting older. And so my friend asked how I was doing in this moment, and I said that it had started to get tough being so far away from my parents. They had started to show chinks in their armor, if you will. They were mortal. And he asked how old they were. And I said mid-60s. And he said, how often do you see them? And I said, maybe once a year. And he looked me in the face and just said, okay, so you're going to see your parents 15 more times before they die. And I remember feeling like I had been punched in the gut. I mean, the idea that the amount of time you have left with the people that you love most in this world is so finite, so countable, that you can put it onto a few hands, shook me to my core. And in that moment, I recognized that something had to change. That if we didn't make a change, I was going to wake up one day and wonder what the fuck I just did with my life. And that was the spark of this entire journey, of starting to recognize and appreciate time and starting to realize that you are actually much more in control of your time than you think. And the next day, we made a decision. My wife and I had a candid conversation, and within 45 days, I had left my job. We'd sold our house in California and moved across the country to live closer to my parents. And so we took that number, 15, and turned it into, now it's in the hundreds. I see my parents multiple times a month. You are much more in control of these things than you think, but only if you develop an awareness of just how important they are.
Yeah, you know what's interesting too is like we talk a lot, obviously, and I think a lot of times people write books and they talk about this stuff and they're like, but do you live it, you know? And one of the things you're really good about is when we go back and forth, you're like, you're kind of working a lot. Like, are you sure you want to do that? You're hanging out with Chris very much. And so I think it's also cool that you know, if somebody's listening to this, it's like, yes, you can internalize all this, but then also find yourself a couple buddies that'll keep you honest. And it seems like you've done that really well. And you've surrounded yourself with these interesting people that kind of have this same perspective too. One thought I had about that was, I saw this other video of yours that I had never seen before, and I don't know if we've talked about it, but you kind of have this theory on phones and how to not have them ruin your daily life. Do you know what I'm talking about and what video I'm talking about?
Not having them in front of you when you're with people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is it? Is this database or is this a Sahil based?
No. There is scientific evidence that if I have my phone out on the table, even face down while we're having a conversation, you and I experience less feelings of connection after that interaction than if I don't have my phone out in front of us.
What about an iPad?
I'm sure it's the exact same effect. I mean, the phone, because of the feeling that we know we get from it, which is it draws our attention. As we're interacting, if I have this out in front of us, you are experiencing me as being less present in that conversation, which makes sense because as soon as it lights up, you see like my eyes jump to it. Because that's what it's built to do. These things are literally designed to grab at your attention. They have entire teams of people that are dedicated to making them addicting. And so the phone has become this drug in our lives that we know it's pulling your attention away from the things that really matter, the people that are sitting in front of you. And so when we talk about these things, we talk about cultivating these relationships, the people that you have around you that keep you honest on this stuff. So much of it is things like that. It's going back to the basics of how we operate as humans, where we can have a face-to-face interaction, and really importantly, where you have people in your circle who are willing to tell you the truth. I think about this all the time, that like friends are great, but a lot of friends will just pat you on the back and like cheer you on when things are going well, which, don't get me wrong, great. We need some cheerleaders in our lives. But more than cheerleaders, I need some people that are willing to hold me to account when I'm not living up to the things that I say I want to live up to. My wife is a huge truth teller in my life. I know that Chris is for you. Willing to tell us the truth when we're not. But you need friends like that too. Like I need friends who are willing to tell me when I am working on things that really don't make sense for me to work on, when I'm getting involved in like opportunities that don't really have the upside or aren't really down in my zone of genius.
Yeah.
You need those truth tellers in your life if you want to continue to grow.
Yeah, it's true. Well, you and I kind of had that happen anyway, because you were like, listen, this thing that we were working on, which was this company, you're like, it's not going to be big enough for us. And like, we had to have a tough conversation, you know, but I think because we had that tough conversation, like, we're better friends.
Absolutely. And that's,
And
by
most
the way,
people will never do that.
Totally.
They'll just shove it down inside, and then they'll have resentment. And then at some point, you know, they kind of talk behind backs about other people because you never get it out.
I learned this from you, actually, and it's become a core mental model in my own life, which is when you avoid a hard conversation, you are taking on a debt that you have to repay with interest at a date in the future. Time does not heal anything when it comes to relationships. Yeah. So you have to make those minor repairs along the way. Otherwise, you're just going to have major repairs to make in the future. I've always thought that metaphor for thinking about hard conversations works. It might just be that you and I have finance minds, so we think in like the debt terms, but it makes sense to me. I'm like, it is literally a debt that you are going to have to repay one way or another, and it's just going to get worse. So having the hard conversation now is the smartest move for the future.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think a lot of times too, you know, when people today have difficult conversations that they want to have, a lot of times they'll just avoid it they'll lose a friendship over it. Like, I remember I had one instance with a girlfriend of mine, and she just didn't want to get on the phone and didn't want to ever talk about it. And our relationship to this day has never been repaired because of it. And so I think that's really normal when we have a society where young people are not actually engaging face to face anymore. We're texting back and forth. You know, we're on social media, we're sending memes. That's the communication methods. We've sort of lost the ability to do the crucial conversations thing. Like, back when you were in finance, didn't they make you read Crucial Conversations?
We didn't read it, but I know the principles.
Yeah. They made us read it at Vanguard because we were more touchy-feely.
Although it is like, I mean, even in the world of finance now, I think that the art of hard conversations has been lost. And I found it time and time again in my finance career that, like, every single time you avoided a hard conversation with a management team that you had invested in, it ended poorly. It was bad because you were just delaying something that needed to happen along the way. And so I also think that, like, there are hacks that make hard conversations easier. If you have a hard conversation with someone, going for a walk with them while you have the hard conversation is scientifically proven to improve that conversation. When you walk alongside someone and when your gait is matching with someone, you actually feel a closer level of connection with them scientifically. And so it makes the hard conversation easier. It makes you feel more connected to the person. They feel more open to you. It also reduces the uncomfortable feeling of making direct eye contact during a hard conversation, which makes it easier to do. So if you need to have a hard conversation with your partner, go for a walk. If you need to have a hard conversation with a colleague or someone that works on your team, go for a walk and do it. It makes it significantly easier, so you won't want to avoid it.
I love that. My team is also now never going to want to go for a walk with me.
It's like being taken out back. It's like taking old Yeller out back. Hey, we got to go for a walk around the block.
Exactly. Oh, that's funny. You know, it kind of like makes me think about something with you that I think is really interesting too. You are probably one of the more disciplined humans I've met. You do crazy ice baths at like 3 a.m. nonstop when you have to like hammer the ice on the East Coast. It's wild. But if you had to pick like one habit that you do every morning, what is it and why?
Let's see. I've always been very disciplined and routine oriented. I probably have some level of undiagnosed OCD that makes me that way. Like, I have always loved the show Dexter because I love, not that he's a serial killer. I should probably caveat that I'm not a serial killer. I guess if I was, I wouldn't admit it. But I've always loved that character because he is so methodical about his routines. And there's something that, like, I have always found comfort in my routines. For me, my mornings have always been about priming myself for the day. I've always liked that idea of, like, how do you prime yourself for the things that you're going to do? The things that I do in the morning now are really focused on creative work, writing. That's when I feel most creative. So, like, this book got basically written from like 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. over the course of 3 years. And to me, in order to be able to write and be creative at 5, I needed to like get up at 4, and it was the ice bath was like the biggest thing for me. And it was not about the trend and about the social media.
You were doing it before it was cool.
I was doing it before it was cool.
I'll give you some credit.
And I've continued to do it now that it's not as cool anymore. By the way, like, that was a trend. 2021 and 2022 it was a great way to get likes on social media. Now, like the people that are ice bathing now are like real OGs.
I actually still like it. I don't post it on social media because I don't need, my ladies all over the internet. But like, it does wake you up.
It definitely wakes you up, and it makes you feel like a badass. And nothing bad has ever come from feeling like a badass. Because when you feel like a badass, when you feel like a savage, when you feel like a winner, that has ripple effects into everything that you do. The way that you engage with the world is different, which is why I always say there's no such thing as a loser who wakes up at 5 a.m. and works out. It has nothing to do with working out. It just has to do with the fact that when you do a hard thing to start the day, if you can convince yourself to do that over and over and over again, you start to interact with the world differently. You rewire your brain to recognize that you are capable of taking an action and creating an outcome. And when you do that, you start to operate better in every area of your life.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I'm pretty disciplined in some areas, but you and Chris are so disciplined physically. Like, it's just a different level. Probably because you were basically a pro athlete. Were you pro? No, you were college, right?
Yeah.
Baseball.
You're selling yourself short.
Well,
by the
thanks.
Way. This morning, I wake up every day at 4 a.m. It's just my habit. And by the way, that's not me being a hardo saying I don't sleep. I go to bed at like 8. I literally live like an 80 or 90-year-old man. So when I say this like wisdom from old people, I sort of am like, yeah, I'm kind of an old soul at heart. But I woke up at 4 and I had a text from you already that I replied to, and you were like, why are you up? And I was like, why are you up? Don't ask me that question.
Well, I think, what I've struggled with sometimes that maybe people can relate to is physically, I have a different discipline indicator than I do professionally. Like, there's very little work-wise I'm not going to do if I say I'm going to do it. I don't know why. I'm just geared that way. But do you have a tool you use to make habits stick for you? Do you have a rule?
Yeah, I have something that I call my ABC system when it comes to habits. And the idea here is that with any habit you are trying to build, you create an A goal, a B goal, and a C goal. The A goal is your best case. That is the best version of the thing during any given day. The B goal is sort of a baseline case, and then the C goal is the minimum viable version of it. So for an example, if you were going to try to create a workout habit, your A goal might be to go to the gym for an hour on a given day. Your B goal might be 30 minutes, and your C goal might be to just take a 15-minute walk. So the whole idea is, on any given day, if you feel great, you go nail your A goal. If you feel just okay, do the B goal. And on days when you just feel like crap and you don't want to do it, you have to convince yourself to just do the C goal. And the whole idea there is that anything above 0 compounds. We know that financially, right? We know that if we put away $10, that's better than putting away 0. The exact same thing applies to all of these areas of your life. So if you can just convince yourself on those bad days to just do something, it's better than doing nothing. But the hard mindset shift there is, for ambitious people in particular, they think that unless it's optimal, it's not going to be beneficial. And that's just not true. Doing a 15-minute walk is better than doing nothing. Doing the 10 minutes of focus work is better than doing nothing. So it doesn't have to be that you have the 4-hour deep work routine or the perfect morning routine or the perfect diet. Just do the little bit that actually stacks up and compounds.
Yeah. Directionally, I think that's how I set most of my goals too. It's every single day is there directional forward movement, as opposed to do we hit our mile goal every single day in a marathon? That doesn't really matter to me. It's am I moving in the right direction on the same path, and is momentum forward? So I think that's interesting. I remember a billion years ago, I saw a picture of you on Twitter, and I was like, oh, that's Sahil. And that's Tim Cook. What? How does he know the CEO of Apple? And then I realized this is a thing about you. You sort of have this ability, I think, to get really big, powerful people to quote unquote mentor you without being annoying, right? And I think a lot of people today are like, I want a big mentor, or how could I get somebody like Tim Cook to care about me? How did that relationship start? Tell that story.
So I met Tim for the first time in 2014 when I first started working. I just graduated from Stanford, and I took a job working in private equity. I was going to work 80 to 100-hour weeks, and that was the job. That's what it was going to be. And so I knew if I wanted to work out, I was going to have to go early in the morning. And that meant getting to the Equinox in Palo Alto at 4:45 in the morning every single day. And that meant I had to get up at 3:45 and like wake myself up and be at the gym at 4:45. It turns out that there aren't that many people that are willing to get to the gym at 4:45. So there was a group of like 8 of us that would show up every single day at that time, like waiting for them to open the door. And you would talk to those people because you were with them every single day. So 6 months go by, and I'm like talking to all these people early in the morning. And I was having a conversation with one guy, and I walk away, and someone comes up to me and is like, "Do you know who that is, that guy you were just talking to?" And I was like, "I don't know. That's the guy, like one of the guys that's here." And he goes, "That's Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple." And I was like, oh, shit. Because I've probably been saying the dumbest stuff to this guy for the last 6 months. And look, I wasn't in tech, so it wasn't close to the space. I didn't know who he was because he didn't look how he looks on stage. And he was the relatively new CEO at the time. He was not nearly the level of prominence that he is today. But for 6 months, I interacted with him on a daily basis and was just normal, right? Like I wasn't looking for something because I didn't know who he was, and I'm not like a big transaction guy, so that's just not how I'm wired. After figuring out who he was, we happened to be having a conversation about something I'd seen related to Apple, and I decided I was going to send it to him as a follow-up. And so I guessed his email address and sent it to him. And he replied right away and was like, made some funny comment about if I was as good at other things as I, at like investing as I am at guessing email addresses, then he's excited to back me or whatever. Like he was just making a joke. And I sort of took that opportunity as a way to get together with him, try to pick his brain, whatever you want to call it. And it ended up sparking what has been an incredible relationship and mentorship. He's been an unbelievable supporter on my journey. He was one of the big drivers of me deciding to leave the path I was on and go down this kind of crazy path. A lot of people don't know his story is really one of like carving his own path. He was on a very stable track in the executive management training program at IBM, long career there. People stay on those paths. They're great. And he decided to step off that and took this job at Compaq, which was a computer startup, like a weird little computer startup. And Steve Jobs was looking for someone to hire and saw his resume and like saw the IBM track and was like, oh, weird, big company guy, probably not a fit. Then saw that he had taken this job at this little startup and was like, maybe this guy's actually different than a big company guy because he made this weird decision, this pattern interrupt. And so decided to talk to him, and then the rest was history. He's created trillions of dollars of value. And so I think his map of like doing the thing that he was pulled towards energy-wise, even when it didn't really make sense, ended up informing him, sort of like giving me some of the courage to go and do this. He's the first blurb on the back of the book now. So he's been an incredible supporter on the journey, but it was like truly engineered serendipity in the sense of it was very lucky that I met someone like that, but it was luck that was engineered by the fact that I was waking up at 3:45 every single day for a long time.
What if 2025 wasn't just a year of grind, but a year of ownership and flow? That's the idea behind my first ever 3-day virtual event this February. It's not just a conference, it's a movement, and it starts with you. Over 3 information-packed days, we're going to tackle everything you need to take control, from finding the perfect business to negotiating killer deals to building the mindset of a true owner. This isn't just a theory. We're bringing in laser coaching on real deals and sharing the exact strategies to spot opportunities everywhere. Here's the thing. This isn't about me. It's about Owner Nation, a collective of driven, unstoppable individuals ready to rewrite their futures. This is your movement and your moment to connect with others who are fighting for the same goal, freedom through ownership. No one else is doing this. We've never done it before, and I think it's the first of its kind. So it's your shot to be part of something bigger when it comes to ownership. Visit the link in the description to save your seat, and let's make 2025 the year we own it together.
Yeah, I think like a mixture of like competency and desire is really rare. And I think not a lot of people realize that. The average person overestimates, I think, how intelligent a lot of people are at the top. And they underestimate how much consistent work over time is the actual path to success. I mean, Tim Cook is probably an outlier, but most of us don't know how to code. Most of us don't know how to create something incredibly unique and differentiated like an Apple. But if we show up at the gym, if we show up every day in private equity, that's actually super rare, which is fascinating to me.
I also didn't want anything. And that, like, in this modern day and age, like, I have this perspective that networking is dead. Because it implies a transaction that is not conducive to building real relationships. The number of people over those years that I've known Tim that I saw come up to him the first time and be like, hey, I want to pitch you on this startup, or like, hey, a job at Apple, whatever the thing is, you have to recognize that people in high positions, their entire life is spent with people coming with their hand out to them. That's their entire life. You are starting to experience that more as you achieve more and more success. You see it, but you can't imagine what that's like for someone like a Tim Cook. His entire life is someone coming with their hand out. So honestly, the fact that for 6 months we interacted when I truly didn't know who he was, built up a base of interactions where he could tell, like, I didn't want anything. The number of times I've ever asked him about something about Apple in my life, I don't even know if I ever have, because I don't care. I'm not looking for a job. I don't want something from him. It is just a genuine desire to learn. He has access to incredible people. He has incredible stories, insights, wisdom. That's what I want. I want to learn from being around these incredible people, understand what makes them tick. And frankly, for someone like that, and I still think about this, he still does it. He is the CEO of one of the largest companies in the world, and he wakes up at 3:45 every single day and goes and works out. That's wild. Baffling. It works harder than any employee that he has working under him. I can't imagine having to work for him and knowing that, like, no matter what I do, I'm not going to work as hard as my boss, not be as focused, not be as driven. It is remarkable. And so we have a lot to learn from people like that, but it comes from being genuine. It comes from actually authentically wanting to create value with no expectation of return.
Yeah. But I think you've done that a few different times. And so I think it's an interesting thing for people to take away, which is like, how do you get the book is amazing. It's right here. I don't know if we can see it on the screen, the 5 types of wealth. And I remember when you were showing me the different covers. I like the one you landed on.
My wife was involved in the design process, which was great.
I didn't know that, actually.
Yeah. She's a designer, so it was great. Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
At Gap,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, she was at Gap, yeah.
You have Tim Cook, Andrew Huberman, Mel Robbins, Arthur Brooks, Gary Vaynerchuk, to name a few. As I was thinking about the book and going through it, there were a lot of ways I could go. And I want to talk about a lot of the frameworks, because I think that's one of the things you're maybe most unique at in the world, which is like, it does seem like you're obsessed with learning. You're like, how do I optimize my life to have this very wealthy life with a broad spectrum definition, but simultaneously do it in the most efficient and effective way possible? But I wanted to start, before I got to some of your frameworks, with, like, what is your favorite story of the book? Like, what's your favorite thing to talk about in there?
I was surprised in the writing process by how much it ended up being a story about the human experience. Like, when I set out, when I signed the original book deal, I thought it was going to be a rather standard sort of framework, simple framework, self-improvement book, where you just have the one framework, and then you basically sort of just build it out for 200 pages, and it becomes one of those books that people say well, this could have been a 10-page blog. And it ended up taking this right turn where the human stories were what called me, and telling the stories of some of the people who have experienced wealth in all these different ways in their life, the people that reached out to me, the people I went and spent time with, that ended up being the most powerful thing. And, in particular, there's a woman named Alexis Lockhart who reached out to me basically right at the end of my book writing process to tell me her story of a tragic event that had happened in her life, and the wisdom that it had inspired and instilled in her, that I think ended up sort of pulling together the whole heart of the book. And I feel like that is unique, because as you read it, you will see yourself in one of the human stories. And that's what really makes ideas stick. And so even when I think about sharing frameworks now, I think that frameworks are made so much more powerful by a real human story to connect to around them, rather than just being a big idea.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, for instance, tell me about the bees and your son. I like that story.
Oh, yeah. So I guess this was in May of this past year, we were outside, and my wife was we were playing. I have a 2-year-old at the time, and we're playing, and my wife was there's a bunch of bees around. I'm going to take Roman inside. It makes me nervous. And so we walk inside, and I look out at this tree, and I see a bunch of movement around it, and I'm looking. And then I kind of have this holy shit moment of that entire tree is bees. So I go out and look, and it is this enormous hive. And so I end up going down this rabbit hole, and I sort of live tweeted this rabbit hole of trying to figure out what was going on and how to get rid of this enormous infestation of bees, because I know nothing about bees. I'm not much of like a handyman either. And so like, I'm definitely not going to try to like take this down myself. So I'm like Googling, exterminators, trying to figure it out, realize it's honeybees. Then I'm like learning about honeybees. And the principle there was like sort of a combination of a lot of things I talk about. One being curiosity, and being able to sort of go down the rabbit hole like that as we're going. I'm like trying to explain to my 2-year-old the type of bees it is, and all of these things. And then also just like a reminder that the most interesting content in the world is like journey-based content. We often think that these kind of like engineered moments are the thing that really drives content, but people want to hear about a human journey. They want to hear about like a real experience, something you're kind of engaged in real time. And so whenever anyone comes and it's like, how can I start my content journey? I really do think that the Gary Vaynerchuk like old school model of like documenting is the way to do it.
Yeah, it's also more fun because you're not engineering things. You're literally living your life and then reflecting on it, which is, I think, how most of us got started. Like, I remember the first piece of content I went out that went viral, I was talking about a laundromat. And like, I literally was like, nobody's really going to be interested in this, but I think this is weird and we should talk about it. And then lo and behold, it becomes this sort of, it has a mind of its own. But I think what I took away from that story from you is like, if you're curious about something and can become obsessed about something, it takes on a life of its own. That mixture of like curiosity and obsession can lead to just about anything you want in the world.
And the coolest thing about that story, which you will love in particular, is so it turned out it was 50,000 honeybees that had formed this hive. And so we had to get a honeybee keeper to come take them away, because you can't kill honeybees, and you shouldn't. They're incredible for the environment. So anyone out there. And a guy comes, a local who makes local honey, and he takes the bees away. And I end up posting about him and his business. He sold out a year's worth of his honey on the back of this thread that had gone viral, and has been like gifting us honeycomb and raw honey as a result ever since, and has become a friend. So Larry the beekeeper, shout out to Larry in Queens, New York.
God, you know I love a boring business. I had to get like one in, you know? You have also said, PSA, this is from a Reddit post that you reposted. PSA, 20 years from now, the only people who will remember that you worked late are your kids. Now you're a dad. You have a son. How do you mesh that belief with, I've also heard you say before, that you have to earn your seat at the table every day? How do you mesh achieving big things with actually being there for your kids and the people that you love?
Yeah. There are a few realities that need to be considered here. And this tension that we're going to talk about, the tension between presence and ambition, is, I would argue, the fundamental tension of being an adult as a parent. Here's one truth. For 10 years, you are your child's favorite person in the entire world. And after that, they have new favorite people. They have friends, best friends, boyfriends, girlfriends, partners, spouses, children of their own. And you will never occupy that same place in their world. But for those 10 years, you are literally everything to them. And unfortunately, that 10-year period also coincides with the time when you are told professionally that you should be chasing every single version of more that the world hands you to. It's when you are hustling the most. It's when you're traveling the most. It's when you're building the most. And so that creates a real tension between your desire to be present during that magic window of time with your kids and your ambition to go and create things, to go and build something. How you navigate that tension is how you navigate your life with your kids. I have wrestled with it, and I share this in the book in the following way, which is, your children need to understand the why you are doing the things you are doing. That is how you navigate this tension well. Because what kids do is, if you do not tell them the why of why you are excited about the things you're doing, why you are passionate about them, why they matter to you, they fill it with the worst answer, which is that you don't care about them, that you don't want to be around, that dad's never around, that mom's never around. When the reality is, you are being driven by a purpose. You are called to something, whether that purpose is building a huge business, or whether it's providing for the family, or whether it's taking care of people, whether it's impacting the world. Whatever that purpose is, that is the real why. And you need to make sure they understand that. And that answer is really informed by my own experience with my father. My dad is extraordinarily hardworking and driven. He was a professor, researcher, works extremely hard to this day. He's 70 years old. And my entire childhood, I remember very clearly him working very hard on things he cared about and me always knowing why he was working hard on those things. Always knowing that when he was gone, I knew why he was gone, what he was doing, the talk he was giving, the research he was doing, and I knew why it mattered to him. So as a result, I felt like I was a part of that mission that he was on. I felt like I was on the journey with him. It wasn't that he was gone and I was here. It was that I was a part of it. And so I always say that to parents, young parents, make sure that your kids understand why you are doing things. Embrace that tension, navigate it in the way that you see fit, but make sure your children are on that journey with you so that it's not an us versus them, so that it's all of you together.
There was some sort of societal shift where historically we used to work together with our families. We used to take over family businesses. We used to actually hire our family members. And that was the norm for most of human history, right? It would actually be bizarre if we did not in some way, shape, or form work with and alongside our family. And then, maybe 2 generations ago, 3 max, that changed. And then it became nepotism to hire people in your family. And then it became actually bad for the next generation to pass things down for them. And I'm not sure we weren't told a lie about that. I work with my father now. He actually works with my company in some ways. I was my brother's first job out of college. My mom's worked with me before. And now my husband and I work together. And, Elizabeth and you worked on the book cover design together as well. So I think there's something really beautiful about, I don't have kids, so I can't speak to that, but allowing your family to come along for the ride. It's like, how can you expect them to be happy for you and your accomplishments if they don't know what they are, if they don't understand them, and if they can't touch them, see them, and feel them? So when it comes to parenting, just to stick on this for one more minute, when it comes to parenting, what habits or rituals do you have with your son in order for you to have real quality time, even though you are traveling all the time?
Yeah, I really try to understand and very clearly establish an awareness of the difference between time and energy. And this is a really important mindset shift for all areas of life, but definitely for your relationships. And the difference here is I can spend an hour with you, but if I'm sitting there on my phone, worried about emails, responding to texts, looking at Instagram, you are not going to feel my presence in any way. And we are not going to feel connected in any way. It's similar to what we were saying earlier about having the phone on the table. Kids are the exact same way. They're no different. If you have your phone out in front of them while you're supposedly spending time with them, that hour, they are not going to feel any connection. But 10 minutes of truly present energy, when they are the only person in the world to you, can last for hours and hours in their mind. And so that is really what I try to focus on. It is, I may be in a season of my life where I am unbalanced, where I am like all hands on deck, charging, focused. Right now, I am in one of those, trying to go out and spread the message of this book, which is very important to me. But when I'm there, I am going to be tuned off of everything else, and it's going to be there. Like, I mean, my favorite thing in the world with my 2.5-year-old boy is like roughhousing. I can't be on my phone while I do that, right? Like, he wants to wrestle, he wants to like get thrown around, get tossed up in the air, all of those things. And so it is the most beautiful thing because it forces you to turn off in a very real way. But that same principle applies to all of your relationships. I mean, if you're like, supposedly having quality time with your partner and you're sitting there thinking about a million other things on your phone, the way to think about your phone is frankly just like it is allowing a million people to be there with you while you're sitting with the one person. And you would know if they were actually sitting in the room that you weren't having quality time with this person. But it's the exact same thing. It's just in the form of a technology. And so finding a way to actually separate from it, for me, I actually have to have it in a different room. Like, I can't have my phone in front of me when my son's there if I want to be present. It needs to be in my office in another room so that I can be there. I had I haven't shared this, but I had a moment recently. I was in my office focusing on something, and my son barges through the door, and he's 2.5, so he starts just creating chaos in my office. I'm trying to focus on something. He starts like throwing stuff. He's jumping up on the couch, like throwing books on the ground. And I started having this enormously negative thought pattern of like, why is he doing this? So annoying. I'm trying to focus. Doesn't he realize I'm working? And I snapped myself back to 4 years ago when my wife and I were struggling to conceive. And we had been struggling for a year or two. And I prayed every single night that we would one day have a healthy child. And then here I was in that moment complaining about the very thing that I had prayed for. Mm-hmm. And it was a reminder to me that sometimes the things you pray for become the things that you complain about if you let them. Mm. Sometimes you are literally living your prayers, but you're not recognizing it in the moment. You're not allowing yourself to zoom out and appreciate that in the moment. So finding those moments to pause and just bask in gratitude and force yourself to zoom out when you catch yourself doing that, holding yourself to the fire, I just think is so important in life.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Hard, too.
Very hard.
What do you do when you get in those negative thought patterns? You know, when you start to get annoyed, if you want to zoom out, is there a mental exercise you use for that?
I think it's the pause and breathe. It requires a level of self-awareness in moments to be able to hold yourself to the fire. Like, you need to be able to tell yourself the truth. We talked about having truth tellers that can say that to you. But in a lot of moments in life, you're not going to have that person there in your ear. You have to be that person in your own ear. And it means you have to be self-critical enough to do that. Mm-hmm. I do think that, like, in the modern day, on social media in particular, there's been this whole trend of give yourself some grace, give yourself a little bit of grace. And while I agree that occasionally we need to give ourselves a little bit of grace, I think for most people, we actually need to hold ourselves to the fire more often than not. I think we give ourselves too much grace. And look, maybe that's a harsh take, but I just think it's true. I think most of the time you need to hold yourself to the fire a little bit and your life will improve. Yeah.
I want to talk really quickly about some of the frameworks I've stolen from you to make my life better, easier, simpler, a little richer and wealthier. You kind of popularized this idea for me around razors. Like a rule of thumb that simplifies decision making, but you have quite a few of them. Can you explain what it is and what are some of your favorites and how do you use them?
Yeah. So the idea of a razor comes from philosophy originally. It's something that allows you to shave away possible explanations and get to the heart of something. So the best way to say it is what you said. It's a rule of thumb that simplifies decision making. The most famous razor, which is probably my favorite one, is Occam's razor, which is the idea that the simplest possible explanation is often the best one. So this is for all the conspiracy theorists out there. I'm sorry. But Occam's razor typically will say that if there is some, crazy thing happening and we want to say that the government is doing some whole like crazy back end, crazy thing, the simplest explanation is like, no, it's just the obvious thing that is happening. The government is not particularly competent. If you have ever flown, you have seen the government in action with the TSA. Or if you've ever gone to try to get a new license, you have seen it at the DMV. That's the government. But all jokes aside on that, Occam's razor is amazing because it's all about the idea that simple is beautiful. And so whenever you have a simple explanation for something or a very complex one that will require a lot of assumptions to be true, usually the simple one is correct. Another one of my favorites for the world of the internet is Hanlon's razor, which says that you should never attribute to malice that which can be adequately explained by stupidity or ignorance. So the second you are in an argument with someone and you start saying like, oh, this person is malicious in their actions or they're in their intent, sometimes it is just ignorance or stupidity. And a lot of the time it's just ignorance or stupidity. That will save you from a whole lot of heartaches and headaches in life.
You know what the other one, it's not a razor, but you sometimes send it to me when I'm pissed off about something on the internet, is I think you should talk about the spotlight effect.
There are two big mistakes in life. Worrying about what other people think about you and believing that other people think about you in the first place. The reality is no one is thinking about you. Everyone is just going through life worried about themselves. Yep. The spotlight effect is this behavioral phenomenon whereby we overestimate the degree to which other people are noticing or observing our actions and behaviors. Basically, we think everyone is looking at us when they're not. Everyone is just worried about themselves. Call it the Zoom phenomenon, because when you're on a Zoom chat, you're so worried about how you look, and then you go look at the statistics, and 90% of the time, people are just looking at themselves. So literally no one is looking at you. You are the only one looking at yourself. And that is true for life. And understanding the spotlight effect is the key to unlocking your own capabilities, because you will be more willing to put yourself out there. There's so much hidden talent in the world that is not putting itself out there for fear of judgment from failure. You're not actually afraid of failure. You're afraid of what other people will think of you if you fail. But no one's thinking about you.
No. And at last, I mean, now that we have a bunch of people on the internet, what I have realized is that even when you are literally the talk of the internet, it lasts 24 hours, a week, max. I mean, a lot of our friends have been huge, scandals, issues, whatever, and then they're gone. It's like a week later, nobody cares about it. And so, but I understand why people worry, because I was talking to a friend of ours, Sri, and Sri, was just getting ridiculed on the internet for I don't know, being Indian and pro-humans, basically. And Sri's about the nicest guy in the world, super competent. And I remember when this started happening to him, I reached out to him. I'm like, hey, man, how you doing? Like, I know how this goes because it's happened to me, not to that degree, because that was a whole different thing with politics involved. But you've had it happen too. The first time it happened to me, I felt like when you are scared about something physically happening to you. There's almost a visceral response that your body has that's like, oh my God, everybody's talking about me online. And it is this, you almost have to overcome it and then realize actually nobody really cares. It was a split second. It's really easy to engage and then you're not worth it. But I understand why people worry, because you can hear about the spotlight effect. And then when the spotlight is even slightly upon you, everything goes out the window.
It's very true. It's also just a reminder. I think it instills in you a sense of humility the first time that happens, because you realize one very sad thing about the world, which is a line from Billions. That's one of my favorite lines. Paul Giamatti's character says it to Axe in the first episode. He says, make no mistake, they might be cheering for you now, but they are dying to boo. And those things, when they happen, people come out of the woodwork to boo and get really excited about booing. And it's a reminder that a harsh truth of life is that most people don't want to see you be successful. There are a lot of people out there who say they want you to be successful until you get up to the point where you're more successful than them, and then they're the first ones ready to try to tear you back down. And so to the point that we made at the very beginning on like finding your people that will truly support you and really genuinely want to see you win, they are few and far between. Yeah. And you need to cherish those people, and you need to be that to someone else. And so that's like when you send a text to the person when they're going through that, people never forget who was there for them when shit hit the fan, when they were down. And it doesn't mean you flew there and you have to be there and give advice and do all sorts of things. It's literally just texting someone to say, hey, I'm with you. These fires are happening in LA right now. Sending a text to the person to say, like, I'm with you, goes so far and is so impactful in the way that you interact with the world. And all of this comes to this idea of social wealth, which is like, there is clear scientific evidence that the people you surround yourself with determine your outcomes. Mm-hmm. The Pygmalion effect says that we rise to the level of expectations that others have for us in our circle. So if you are surrounded by people who think you are capable of more, who believe in you, who are telling you to think bigger, who are pushing you to grow, you will rise to the level of those expectations. So what better reason to choose wisely about the people that you have in your circle, the people that you are surrounding yourself with, the people you are gifting your precious energy in your life?
Yeah, it's a really important part you talk about in the book, and I love that study because it's wild. Do you want to talk? I know you talk about it in the book. Yeah. You want to break down the study?
Yeah. The Harvard study of adult development is this incredible longitudinal study that was done over the course of 85 plus years. They tracked the lives of 1,300 original participants and then all of their descendants, so like about 2,000 plus people. And they found that the single greatest predictor of physical health at age 80 was relationship satisfaction at age 50. Not your cholesterol, not your blood pressure, not your smoking or drinking habits. How you felt about your relationships determined your physical health outcomes, how you aged over your course of your life. And so we know, scientifically, we know that relationships are the key to living a good life, a happy, healthy life. Every single person, you go and ask them, what do you want your ideal day to look like at age 80? No one says alone. Everyone says surrounded by love, right? You got your partner, you maybe want kids, grandkids, your friends. That's what we all want. And yet, when you ask them what they're doing today, very few are investing in that future. You know to invest in financial wealth. You know that if you want to be rich when you're older, you have to invest every single day. But if you want to have rich relationships, you have to do the same. You have to send the text to the friend. You have to make sure that you are the reason that your group of friends is getting together. You have to spend time with your parents or your partner or your children. These things don't just magically appear out of thin air. You have to invest in them the same way that you do in your financial wealth.
Yeah, that's why I think it's interesting. I mean, you have a lot of different reasons why you focused on the actual 5 levels to wealth here. But I think I want people to read the actual book, but talk high level about, you spent a ton of time researching what are the things that matter? What creates a wealthy life? Why did you choose these 5? What are they? And how is that going to impact somebody's life?
Yeah. When I went on this journey after that conversation that I had with the friend that we talked about earlier, and made this big change in my life, I went on a multi-year journey to try to understand what were the things that contributed to a truly happy, healthy, fulfilling, wealthy life. And the realization there was that the scoreboard is fundamentally broken. Peter Drucker, the famous management theorist, said, what gets measured gets managed. So the thing that you can measure ends up being the thing that you focus on. It's the thing that you narrowly, myopically hone in on and optimize around. Money is extremely measurable. So it becomes the thing that we narrowly focus on. And the truth is that money is a part of living a truly wealthy life, but it is just a part. There are all of these other things that we sort of know in the back of our mind matter, but we don't have a way to measure them. We don't have a way to think about them in the same way. And so as a result, we don't manage them. We don't actually think about investing in them in the same way. That is what I'm trying to change. And so as I came to this idea, this thesis, I went and talked to thousands of people. And basically did 2 things. One, I went to much older people who had lived long lives and talked to them about the advice they would have for their younger selves and how they felt about living a good life. And then I went and talked to younger people and asked what they wanted when they were 80. What did they want their life to look like? This question of what does your ideal day look like? And the thing that you find is that we all want the same thing. And it has very little to do with money. Money is kind of an enabler, but not an end in and of itself. And it was 4 things. It was time, people, purpose, and health. We want time, freedom to choose. We want to feel free. People, we want to be surrounded by love. Purpose, we want to feel like we know what we are doing every day, that there is some reason that we are doing these things. And then health, we want to feel good of mind and body. Money, again, was an enabler to those things, but not an end in and of itself. It was a tool, but not the goal, if you will. And that was how I really came to this idea and this construct of thinking about this new scoreboard, a new way to measure your life across the broader set of pillars that contribute to building a good life. And the thesis is that if you measure the right things, you will take the right actions and you will create the right outcomes. If you measure the wrong things, if you're just measuring for the battle of money, you may win that battle, but you will lose the war of the broader picture of your life. So we need to measure for the full war. We need to measure for the entire picture of what we're doing, and then we'll make the right decisions and we'll create the right outcomes.
Do you think young Sahil, young finance bro Sahil would struggle with talking about love? Did you talk about love back then too?
Talk about love when I was young finance bro. I viewed a lot of things as a distraction to the important thing, which was making money. I was so narrowly focused on external affirmations. And I have this thing in the book, this thing that I call the status test, the bot status test, where you ask yourself when you're about to buy something, would I buy this if I couldn't tell anyone that I had it? If I couldn't post it on Instagram, if I couldn't show anyone? Like, would I buy this watch? Would I buy this car if no one knew about it except me? Usually the answer is no. And what you realize when you start to think about that question is you are living a lot of your life for the benefit and pleasure of other people, which is kind of a crazy thing to think about. Like, how much of my life am I actually living for other people rather than for myself? And so I think that a lot of my life, my whole mental model for life was like, I am going to wake up one day when I have X $million and feel happy. And every time I would get to that number and it would have disappeared and it would be some other number. And we have studies to say this. Michael Norton, this Harvard Business School professor, went and interviewed high net worth individuals, people worth anywhere from $1 million on through $100 million plus. And he asked them, how happy are you on a scale of 1 to 10? So they answered. And then he said, how much more money would you need to be at a 10? Across the board, whether they were worth $1 million or $100 million, everyone said 2 to 5x as much. It didn't matter what level they were at, which makes no sense. So we know it's not about some arbitrary number. It is about understanding your definition of enough. Where do you actually need to get to? What does your life look like where you are truly fulfilled? It's not going to be the money. It's going to be what that enables in your actual life in these other areas. I think I really would have struggled with that. That being said, and I need to make this clear, I am by no means saying that money doesn't matter. I am not telling anyone that they should go and, give up their worldly possessions and live in the Himalayas as a monk. If you want to do that, by all means, go do it. I just won't be joining you. I like money. I like being able to afford things. I like having money. I am just saying that it can't be the only thing that you focus on, that you need to invest in these other areas in some way, shape, or form across the entirety of your life. There may be seasons of your life when financial wealth is your primary focus. Yeah. And one of the key concepts in the book is the idea of seasons, the idea that what you prioritize or focus on during any one season can and should change. Your 20s and 30s are a great time to prioritize building a financial foundation for the rest of your life. You talk about this all the time. The fact that you can invest money early and it will compound and grow for the rest of your life. Incredible. You should do that. That's a great season. But when your kids are 5, it may be a great season for you to prioritize your relationship with your kids and sort of be in more maintenance mode from a financial wealth building standpoint, if you make that decision. But the point around all of this is it's up to you. You don't need to accept the default definition of success that the world hands you. You get to create your own. And the truth is, you will never feel successful unless you create your own definition of success.
You've got to do that. And, other people aren't going to like it. I think that's the other part that's true. I mean, you know this. I'm terrible at responding to text messages. Why? Because I try to not have my phone on me all the time. Otherwise, I get distracted, and I have a specific agenda and goal for the day. And so if I let even people I love and adore distract me from that goal, then that means I got to work longer. I got to stay later. I can't have dinner with my husband. My husband and my dinner every night is a priority. And so, I think for somebody listening, if they're like, all right, this makes sense. I've seen you personally sacrifice a bunch of career progression things that you could do. At one point, you were raising a big fund and you were going to build another asset management business, which we've both done before. And then you were like, no, actually, I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to think and I'm going to be with my son. Do you have a cost benefit analysis or a framework you use to decide, okay, this is a goal for me or this is an anti-goal?
Yeah, I think it's really important what you just said, which is there are trade-offs that you have to make. There are sacrifices along the way. And I have explicitly said no to a number of opportunities where I could make more money because I know what they would require is me being pulled away from this time freedom that I have with my son primarily during this window of time when I'm playing such a special role in his life. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to go all out for those things when he's 8 years old and spending more time in school, or 12, or whenever. Maybe when he leaves the house, when he's graduates from high school, I lean into a bunch of these opportunities. What you decide in the current season does not preclude you from changing in the future season. And look, we made this decision in a very real way when it comes to my wife's path. My wife was on a high-powered designer track, rising through the ranks in a very competitive industry, doing great. And when our son was born, she made the decision that she wanted to truly prioritize being a mom during these early years of his life. Where we live, in the Northeast and in a lot of coastal cities, that was a weird decision. She still gets comments from other moms in town saying, "You're just a mom."
Oh, gross.
And we hate it because I think it's the most important job in the world. I think it's remarkable the energy that she puts towards it and the impact it has on our relationship with our son and on his development. But her ability to say, this is one season of life, and I'm going to really be immersed in being a mom during this season. And that doesn't mean that I'm not going to go back and be a designer in the next season. When he's in school and I have more time and he's not home all the time, I can go do that. And I have the freedom to make that decision as I so choose. That is a really empowering way to think about your life, because it's a reminder that there's no such thing as a one-way door. All of these are two-way doors. You can walk back through them, and you can go back and prioritize these other things again. And we need to recognize that more in life.
Yeah. You also have some interesting takes on being married and how to treat your wife in a world where there's a lot of tension between men and women these days. There's tension with traditional, non-traditional roles. There's tension with, God, I've been on Twitter too much lately, but with how people feel about women in relationships and should you have them. When you think about your partnership, she's beautiful, smart, very supportive of you. How did you decide that she was the one? And how do you also think husbands should show up for wives these days?
So before I got married, my mom asked me how I knew Elizabeth, my wife, was the one. And I told her it was because I loved doing nothing with her. And the realization there is that most of life is just sitting around doing nothing. It's sitting on the couch, hanging out, watching shows, really doing nothing. But you create this impression that life is all about these crazy honeymoon moments. It's about the fancy date nights out, the Instagram moments. It's the impression that social media creates for what your life looks like. But the reality is that life is those moments of nothing. So when you find someone that you just love doing nothing with, that is your person. Yeah. That is the person that you want to go and build a life with. And I was very lucky in the fact that I met my wife when she was 14. I was 15 years old when we met.
Good clarification, also given Twitter these days.
Yeah.
Same age range.
Yeah. Sorry. Yes, I was 15. She was 14. And we met in a high school computer lab.
I didn't know that.
The strength that gets built in you when you have grown across different seasons of life, she has been very consistent throughout all of those seasons, actually, as a human. I have not. I was not a person that I am proud of for many of those years. But the fact that she has seen me through all of that
Were you dating that whole time?
We were dating that whole time.
Wait, since you guys were 14 and 15?
Yeah. She was, I guess, when we started dating, she was technically 15. I was 16.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You
We
know,
did
Chris
long
and I
distance
met
for 7 years. I did
when
know
we
that.
were 11 and 12.
I did
but
know that.
we had a break. Fascinating.
Yeah. We she has seen me through some dark times in my life, and a lot of times when I was focusing on all the wrong things, and she has really been like a ballast for my ship. And I just think today, as I think about our relationship, especially as I think about my son, one of the highest callings as a father to me, like one of the things I hope for, is I want to know that if I drop dead tomorrow, that my son is going to have an amazing life. And I feel that so strongly, and it is the most amazing feeling in the world to just know that, like, my son would have an incredible life because his mom loves him more than anything in the entire world. And I want my son to know that. And so when I think about that, I always think, like, you can't teach your kids anything. You have to embody the things you want them to learn. Yeah. So if I want my son to treat my wife like a queen, I better damn well treat my wife like a queen. If I want my son to embrace the idea of delayed gratification, he better see me doing hard things for the benefit of something in the future. Every single thing that you want your kids, that you want the people around you to learn, you have to embody those things. And so our relationship, I just think that all of this, like every single thing that I am doing, that I'm working on, it is us that we are doing it. She might not be on the cover of the book, but you go look at the dedication, it's on the first page, she's in there. And none of this would be possible without her and without my son and the clarifying force that he has been in my life.
I love that. Yeah. And also I think, today, young people, I think there's like a loss of hope or something, they think that men like you don't exist. They think that women, maybe like your wife, don't exist. And they think that because they've had a lot of shallow interactions, that is the only thing that exists in marriage. And maybe because so many marriages end poorly, that's all that exists. So I think it's really beautiful to share that, because I find the same thing with my husband. Don't get me wrong. We definitely have fights. We have our moments 100%. But I truly believe that a happy marriage is better and more important than a big bank account. And I think your book is a really good representation of it. Doesn't have to be and or. It doesn't have to be or, it can be and. But man, if you had to choose one, you'd probably choose the relationship.
Yeah. And I personally think that having an incredible marriage is the biggest cheat code for making a lot of money in life.
Yeah.
There is something incredible about feeling like you have a house full of love behind you as you pursue your ambitions and as you try to go and build something to make money. And look, I have no desire to be a rich guy by myself. The Forbes top 10 richest people in the world have 13 divorces among them, last time I checked. I have zero desire to be really rich, but have broken relationships with my children. Who knows how many there are out there like that. And so the whole point is we want to build this full, comprehensively wealthy life. We want to make a lot of money, no doubt. I think it's great. You can afford incredible experiences with people. You can build incredible things. But you have to remember why you are doing that. Yeah. It's not for the sake of the money. It's for the things that you're going to be able to create on the back of it. And that's really what this book is about. It's about defining what matters to you and then going and taking action to build your life around those things.
So good. I want to end with two questions, but I love this quote from your grandfather. You're very close to your family, I am too, that said, "The worst decisions in life are made when you allow your head to talk you into something when your gut already said no." Is that something that you live by today?
I try to. I don't always. And a lot of the things I write, post, talk about, videos are sort of reminders to self at times, where I will post something on Twitter when I have experienced a time when I have not lived by it and am reminding myself. And I realize if I'm reminding myself, there's millions of people out there that need that same reminder as I do. My grandfather was an extraordinarily wise man. And I feel so much love for him because when my mom is Indian, my father is white from the Bronx, New York. And when my dad wanted to marry my mom, his father was not accepting of it and told him he had to choose between my mom and his family. And my dad walked out the door and never saw his family again. And to this day, I never met my dad's parents. He has 3 siblings I never met. I have first cousins out there somewhere that I never met. He truly rejected the common convention and walked his own path with everything in him. And I imagine it was one of the hardest decisions he's ever made, or maybe the easiest, because he knew that this amazing, now they've been married 42 years. They have a incredible, loving relationship. I cannot imagine my parents not together. But the thing that instilled this love in me for my grandfather was when my mom brought my dad to meet her family, they were initially not super excited about their daughter marrying an American. And my grandfather asked my dad, "Well, how do your parents feel about it?" And my dad said, "Well, interesting story there." And after that moment, my grandfather ended up taking my dad in as like another son. If someone was willing to leave their entire family to be with his daughter, I think he realized that that person was okay in his book. And I just saw that love and that legacy of love trickle through my family in the way that my grandfather supported my dad, the way that my dad supported me throughout my whole life. And that has meant more than anything else in the world. And my grandfather's wisdom continues to run through me. I mean, I have a piece of paper on my desk that is one of his most important pieces of wisdom that says, "You'll achieve more by being consistently reliable than by being occasionally extraordinary." And I think about that every single day. Just show up and do the work. It's hard to bet against the person who just keeps showing up.
Do you think you can change your life in a year?
Absolutely. I think Bill Gates was the one who said most people overestimate what they can do in a day and underestimate what they can do in 10 years. I kind of disagree. Sorry, Bill. I think most people overestimate what they can do in a day and underestimate what they can do in 1 year. You are 1 year of focus away from people calling you lucky, from people saying, "Oh, she just got lucky," or "he just got lucky." 1 year of focus, 1 year of asking the right questions, 1 year of clear intentions, 1 year of focused daily actions, you can change your entire life.
So good. Well, I hope everybody picks up this book. I don't say that very often, actually, as you know, because we're buddies. But I think it's really important, the 5 types of wealth, that we talk so much about money, but damn, I'm doing you guys a disservice if at the end of the day you have a big bank account and that's all you got. And so I'm really glad you wrote the book. SahilBloom.com. Sahil Bloom on all the socials. Anywhere else you want to send people? And it comes out February 4th?
February 4th. Available everywhere. And pick it up at your local bookstore. Let's go support some local businesses.
That's right. Small business, baby. Although if you have to buy it on Amazon and still support Sahil, I'm okay with it too. But let's go with local first. Sahil, you're the man. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.